Long before written history, and long before the rise of empires we know today, there were civilizations whose existence challenges everything we thought we understood about the past. Cities carved from stone, islands sculpted with precision, and technologies that seem impossibly advanced, yet all vanished beneath rising waters or the passage of time. This video explores the mysteries of these pre-flood civilizations, uncovering stories of empires that defy logic and artifacts that refuse to be explained. From sunken metropolises in the Pacific to megalithic wonders in distant valleys, each discovery forces us to question what really came before us and what has the world forgotten. Prepare to encounter the remnants of a past that science struggles to explain, a history lost to memory but waiting to be uncovered. Atlantis, the sunken memory of a lost age. The sea hides its memories well. Beneath the rolling tides and shifting sands, the past is whispered, not spoken. Fragments of a story too vast, too ancient, for history to hold. Sailors once claimed to hear strange echoes rising from the depths, like the remnants of a civilization still breathing somewhere below. That legend had a name, Atlantis. Plato's words are where the story begins. Around 360 BC, he described a magnificent island kingdom larger than Libya and Asia combined, a realm of soaring temples and golden palaces, ruled by a people whose wisdom and technology surpassed all others. He said it lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, and that, in a single day and night of misfortune, it sank beneath the sea. To most scholars, it was an allegory, a moral tale about the fall of arrogance. Yet the details Plato offered were unsettlingly specific, as though he were remembering something, not inventing it. The search for Atlantis has lasted centuries. From philosophers and explorers to modern sonar expeditions, humanity has chased this phantom continent across the oceans. Some have claimed to find traces in the Caribbean, others in the Mediterranean or the Azores. In the sands of Santorini, researchers found a civilization destroyed by volcanic fire, a cataclysm that mirrored Plato's tale. But the Minoans were not as old as he described. His story placed Atlantis 9,000 years before his time, far earlier than any known civilization should have existed. That single detail changed everything. Imagine a world at the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were rising, coastlines collapsing, and entire continents were being redrawn. What if Atlantis was not a mythic city at all, but a memory of one of those drowned lands, a remnant of humanity's forgotten pre-flood chapter? The timing fits too closely to ignore. Around 11,600 years ago, global temperatures spiked, glaciers melted, and the ocean swallowed hundreds of coastal settlements. The world Plato described could have vanished in such a flood. Archaeology offers fragments that seem to whisper of an older intelligence. The ruins of Göbekli Tepe, carved with precision 12 millennia ago, stand as proof that organized societies existed long before agriculture. If such people could raise massive stone temples in Turkey, could they also have built cities along coasts now lost beneath the waves? The seabeds of India, Japan, and the Caribbean all bear submerged structures, walls, pavements, steps, whose geometry defies randomness. Scientists debate whether they are natural or man-made, but the symmetry tells its own story. Some researchers have turned to Antarctica. Old maps, like the Piri Reis chart of 1513, show the continent's coastline without ice, as it might have appeared tens of thousands of years ago. How could such precision exist before modern surveying tools? Could these maps be relics of an antediluvian civilization that charted the globe before the flood? It is speculation, yes, but the consistency of these clues is difficult to dismiss. Each discovery feels like another shard of the same broken mirror, reflecting back an image we're only beginning to recognize. Others look to the Azores, where submerged plateaus and basalt columns trace unnatural patterns across the seafloor. There, divers have found blocks arranged like roads, and sonar readings hint at large structures buried beneath volcanic sediment. Geologists caution that such formations could be natural, but the placement, in the very region Plato described, tempts belief. It is as if the ocean is taunting us with glimpses, allowing only fragments to surface before pulling the truth back into its depths. Cultural echoes of a great deluge exist everywhere. The Sumerians told of Eridu and the god Enki, who warned a chosen man before the flood. The Hebrew Bible speaks of Noah, The Greeks wrote of Deucalion. The Hindus remember Manu. Each story describes a destruction of the world by rising waters, followed by rebirth and memory lost. Different names, different lands, yet the same rhythm, the same haunting refrain. Could they all be recalling the same event? If so, then Atlantis may not be alone. It may be the name we gave to an age that ended, not just a city that drowned. Every civilization leaves traces, but time is a patient eraser. If Atlantis existed before 10,000 BC, its ruins now lie hundreds of meters beneath the sea, beyond the reach of casual exploration. Technology is only now catching up. Autonomous submersibles have begun mapping continental shelves, revealing ancient riverbeds and possible harbour outlines far below the surface. In some of those drowned valleys, researchers have detected rectangular anomalies, foundations that seem too deliberate to be natural, but confirmation requires excavation, and the ocean guards its secrets fiercely. The mystery persists because it sits at the boundary of myth and evidence. Skeptics dismiss Atlantis as a cautionary fable. Believers see in it the smoking ruins of an advanced pre-flood world. Between them lies an ocean of uncertainty. Yet there is one truth both sides cannot deny. Civilizations rise and fall, and the sea has claimed many. If we could drain the oceans even for a moment, perhaps we would find the bones of forgotten empires scattered across the seabed, Atlantis among them, silent and waiting. Some say we seek Atlantis not to find a city, but to find ourselves, to rediscover the origins of our own intelligence, erased by time and tide. For if the story is true, even in part, then humanity's memory is far older than our books admit. The flood was not just an ending, it was a veil, and somewhere beneath it, Atlantis still dreams. Lemuria, the vanished empire of the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean glimmers deceptively calm, but beneath its tranquil surface lies a graveyard of secrets. For centuries, sailors crossing from Africa to Asia told of strange currents and submerged peaks that seemed like the bones of a drowned world. When modern scientists studied the seabed, they found ridges, plateaus, and mountain chains deep beneath the waves, traces, some said, of a continent long vanished. Its name, whispered through time, is Lemuria. The idea began in the 19th century, born not from myth but from science. Zoologists noticed that lemurs and certain plants appeared both in Madagascar and southern India, but were absent in Africa and the Middle East. The pattern was too deliberate to dismiss as coincidence. To explain it, British naturalist Philip Sclater proposed that a lost landmass had once connected these distant regions, a continent later swallowed by the sea. He named it Lemuria, after the small primates whose scattered presence first sparked the theory. At first, it seemed only a geological curiosity, yet as explorers and mystics began to weave it into their imaginations, Lemuria transformed from a scientific hypothesis into something far more enigmatic. Helena Blavatsky, the 19th century founder of the Theosophical Society, described it as the home of an ancient pre-human race, wise, spiritual beings who flourished long before Atlantis. In her writings, Lemuria was not just a land bridge, but a civilization vast and radiant, that fell to ruin when the oceans rose. Imagine a continent stretching from the coast of Africa to Indonesia, with high mountains, dense forests, and great cities of stone and light. According to esoteric traditions, Lemuria's people were said to have mastered a form of energy that modern science cannot name, and they communicated through resonance rather than speech. Some legends claim they were taller than modern humans, luminous in presence, with knowledge that transcended both matter and time. Whether myth or memory, these stories suggest a civilization that reached its height in a world untouched by the cataclysm to come, the age before the flood. In recent years, fragments of the old theory have resurfaced, not in mythic texts but in geological studies. Submerged plateaus like the Kerguelen Plateau, stretching over 1 million square kilometers beneath the southern Indian Ocean, hint at land once above sea level. Sediment samples reveal traces of ancient soil, suggesting that parts of this region may have been dry land millions of years ago. Though mainstream geology dates this to long before human existence, the findings still evoke an uncanny parallel, a continent that rose and vanished, leaving no trace of its inhabitants. In southern India, certain traditions preserve echoes of such a world. Tamil legends speak of Kumari Kandam, a land that once bridged India and Sri Lanka, home to an advanced society that mastered art, astronomy, and ocean navigation. According to ancient Tamil texts, 3 great floods destroyed their civilization, leaving only fragments of their literature and culture behind. Many scholars interpret these stories as symbolic, yet others suspect they preserve a distant cultural memory of real events, perhaps a series of cataclysms that erased entire coastlines. If Lemuria and Kumarikandam were one and the same, they might represent humanity's forgotten origin story, buried under layers of myth and sediment. Archaeological finds along the Tamil Nadu coast strengthen the intrigue. Offshore explorations have revealed stone structures near Pumpuhar, submerged temples, and signs of ancient settlements now resting beneath the waves. The carbon dating remains uncertain, but the pattern echoes that of other submerged sites around the world, hints of civilizations that once stood on ground now lost to the sea. Even far from the Indian Ocean, the legend of Lemuria seems to resonate. Polynesian traditions speak of a vast land swallowed by the ocean. The Malagasy people of Madagascar tell tales of ancestors who came from a western land that sank long ago. The shared imagery, a flood, a lost homeland, a people forced to scatter, feels too universal to dismiss. It is as though humanity carries a collective scar, the memory of a great drowning that shaped our earliest myths. Skeptics argue that Lemuria was nothing more than an outdated scientific guess, replaced by the modern understanding of plate tectonics. Continents drift, land bridges rise and fall. Yet this explanation does not erase the fascination that Lemuria still evokes. If all memory of a great pre-flood civilization were lost, it would reappear exactly like this, as fragments of lore scattered across cultures, converging around the same impossible story. In spiritual writings, Lemuria is often described not as destroyed but as transformed. Some believe its people foresaw the coming deluge and chose to retreat underground or into another dimension of existence, their knowledge sealed within the earth itself. Mystics claim that their energy lingers beneath the Indian Ocean, influencing consciousness, drawing seekers to the sea without knowing why. It may sound fantastical, but the persistence of the myth speaks to something deeper, a human longing to reconnect with a forgotten beginning. Science too occasionally brushes against mystery. In 2013, researchers discovered remnants of microcontinental crust beneath Mauritius, fragments of an ancient landmass hidden beneath layers of lava. They called it Mauritia. Its age, over 3 billion years, rules out any link to human history, yet its discovery proved that the ocean floor does hide lost continents. For believers in Lemuria, it was a small but satisfying vindication, a reminder that the improbable sometimes turns out to be true. Whether as myth or memory, Lemuria refuses to die. Its name reappears in modern literature, meditation practices, and fringe archaeology, always carrying the same echo of nostalgia, the sense that something vast and beautiful was once ours, then lost forever. Perhaps that is why the story endures. It invites us to imagine a time when humanity was not divided by nations or seas, but united by a shared origin now buried in the deep. And perhaps, beneath the quiet pulse of the Indian Ocean, the heart of Lemuria still beats, waiting for humanity to remember what it once was. Mu, the Pacific cradle of humanity. Somewhere in the endless blue of the Pacific, where waves stretch farther than memory and the horizon feels eternal, whispers speak of a lost world called Mu. The story of this civilization is older than legend, older perhaps than recorded time itself. Sailors, mystics, and explorers alike have claimed that beneath the tranquil surface of the ocean lies the buried heart of humanity's first dawn. It is a tale that begins not with evidence but with echoes. The name Mu emerged in the late 19th century, traced to the writings of Augustus Le Plongeon, who claimed that the lost civilization of the Maya had preserved records of an ancestral land that vanished beneath the sea. To him, this continent once stretched across the Pacific, uniting the farthest reaches of Polynesia, Asia, and the Americas. His ideas were later expanded by James Churchward, a British colonel who spent decades piecing together fragments of what he believed were sacred tablets describing a mighty land, the cradle of humankind. Though ridiculed by academia, his passion kept the myth alive. Imagine a world before the world we know. Vast islands linked by coral bridges, cities carved from volcanic stone, towers rising from the surf like the ribs of ancient gods. The people of Mu, according to Churchward, lived in harmony with nature and the cosmos, guided by spiritual laws rather than warfare or greed. They were said to possess technologies and knowledge beyond anything known today. Control of natural forces, perhaps even the secrets of life itself. To skeptics, this was fantasy. To believers, it was a memory written in the bones of the earth. The Pacific, after all, hides more than it reveals. Beneath its waters lie mountain chains the size of continents, ridges that once may have stood above the surface before tectonic shifts pulled them under. Islands like Easter, Rapa Nui, and Nan Madol hint at something greater, megalithic ruins that stand as lonely witnesses to a forgotten epoch. The Polynesians who later settled these lands carried oral histories of great floods and sunken homes, stories that sound eerily similar to the myths of Atlantis and the Deluge found in nearly every ancient culture. Nan Madol, the Venice of the Pacific, offers one of the most tantalizing clues. Off the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, this city of basalt blocks was built on a lagoon, with no known means of transporting its massive stones. Some locals still whisper that the builders possessed mana, a force of divine origin, able to lift stones as light as air. Archaeologists place its construction only 1,000 years ago, yet the site feels much older, like a survivor of another world's memory. Churchward described Mu as the birthplace of mankind, the source of all ancient civilizations that followed. He claimed that when Mu sank beneath the ocean in a cataclysm, its survivors fled in all directions, to Egypt, to Sumer, to the Indus Valley, to the Americas, carrying fragments of knowledge that would later spark the rise of human culture. His map of migration paths resembles a web connecting the earliest cradles of civilization. While mainstream science attributes these similarities to coincidence or convergent development, the myth of a shared origin lingers, like a chord struck deep in our collective psyche. Some researchers have pointed to linguistic patterns as possible clues. Words and symbols across Pacific and American cultures seem to share surprising similarities: spirals, suns, serpents, and the sacred cross within a circle. Could these motifs be remnants of a once unified world memory, retold by generations who no longer remembered where their ancestors had come from? If true, then the myths of Mu may not be pure invention but rather distorted fragments of a real event, a prehistoric civilization lost to the ages. Yet the Pacific remains enigmatic. Its floor is restless, shaped by tectonic plates that shift and consume, birthing islands and swallowing them again. Geological records show that entire archipelagos have risen and fallen over the course of millions of years. Scientists argue that no continent could have existed there recently enough to align with human history, but ancient legends seem to disagree. Every culture of the Pacific Rim, from Japan to Hawaii to New Zealand, tells of a sunken homeland swallowed by water after a great upheaval in the sky or the sea. Even the stars have a story to tell. Some Pacific navigators speak of the path of ancestors that once stretched across the heavens, guiding the lost people of the ocean back to where their home once stood. Could these star routes be symbolic memories of migrations after a global flood? Or were they simply poetic ways to map the sea? The mystery endures, suspended between myth and possibility. Modern technology has joined the search. Sonar scans have revealed strange formations on the ocean floor near Yonaguni, Japan, terraces, pillars, and stairways that some claim are man-made. Others insist they are natural formations sculpted by erosion. To those who believe in Mu, Yonaguni is a remnant of that lost civilization, a fragment of a once vast empire that stretched across the Pacific before nature reclaimed it. Scientists remain cautious, but curiosity persists. The ocean guards its secrets well. What makes the legend of Mu so enduring is not the evidence, but the yearning it represents. The human desire to belong to something ancient and grand, to trace our story back beyond the first cities, beyond even the first memory of the flood. The myth of Mu invites us to imagine that civilization did not begin in isolation, but with a single pulse that once beat beneath the waves, connecting all who would come after. If Mu never existed, then perhaps it exists for another reason, as the echo of our need to remember what time has erased, and to believe that the ocean still hides the first spark of humankind's forgotten beginning. Göbekli Tepe, the builders before civilization. In the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, where the landscape rolls like ancient parchment, something impossible was found buried beneath the soil. Massive stone pillars, carved with the shapes of animals and symbols older than writing itself, stood arranged in perfect circles. They seemed to rise from the dawn of memory, yet they had been deliberately hidden, sealed beneath layers of earth, as if the builders had wanted their work to sleep until the world was ready to remember it. This place is called Göbekli Tepe, and it challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. Archaeologists first uncovered it in the 1990s, though shepherds had long known of the mound they called Potbelly Hill. What lay beneath, however, was unlike anything known from the Neolithic world. The stones, some weighing up to 20 tons, were carved and placed upright more than 11,000 years ago, long before the invention of agriculture, cities, or metal tools. It was as though the timeline of civilization had been turned upside down. At first glance, the site looks like a temple. The circles, called enclosures, seem to have been places of ritual, lined with carved pillars bearing reliefs of lions, vultures, foxes, and snakes. 2 towering monoliths stand at the center of each circle, human-like in form, with hands carved at their sides. They face each other like guardians or gods, silent across millennia. No signs of habitation have been found nearby. No hearths, no houses, no refuse. Whoever built Göbekli Tepe came there only to worship, to commune, or to remember. This fact alone unsettles the established story of civilization. For decades, historians believed religion and monumental architecture emerged only after humans settled into agricultural life. Göbekli Tepe suggests the reverse, that faith may have built civilization, not the other way around. Perhaps it was spiritual longing, not survival, that first brought humanity together to raise stone against the sky. The mystery deepens when one considers the precision of the work. The pillars were quarried, shaped, and transported without metal or wheel. The carvings are detailed, confident, and purposeful. Some researchers see constellations encoded in their arrangement, celestial alignments marking solstices or star movements thousands of years before recorded astronomy. If true, Göbekli Tepe could be not only the first temple, but also the first observatory, a map of the heavens drawn by hands that had only just begun to settle the earth. There is also the question of who buried it. Around 8000 BCE, after centuries of use, the builders filled in their own creation with sand and rubble. The act was deliberate, almost ceremonial. Why would they conceal something so magnificent? Some believe it was to protect the sacred site after a shift in climate or culture. Others think it marked the end of an age, perhaps even the fading memory of a world before the flood myths that appear in nearly every early civilization. Every culture remembers a time when the world began anew. The Sumerians wrote of Eridu, the first city built after the waters receded. The Hebrews told of Noah. The Egyptians spoke of Zep-Tepi, the first time when gods walked among men. Göbekli Tepe may be a remnant of that forgotten chapter, a bridge between myth and archaeology, standing at the threshold between 2 worlds, one lost to Cataclysm and one just beginning. Some of the carvings add to this sense of unease. A headless man lies beneath vultures, snakes twist beside foxes, and creatures of the wild dominate every surface. The art speaks of both reverence and fear, as if humanity was trying to make peace with forces greater than itself. Perhaps these stones are not only monuments, but messages, a warning or remembrance from those who witnessed the end of something vast. The site's builders remain nameless. No written language records their story. Their descendants, if any survived, left only myths scattered across continents, stories of teachers from the stars, of gods who came from the sea, of civilizations destroyed and reborn. Some fringe theorists claim Göbekli Tepe was built by survivors of an earlier, advanced culture, perhaps even one that existed before the last ice age ended. Mainstream archaeologists dismiss this, yet the precision and purpose of the site still feel far beyond what hunter-gatherers were thought capable of. Excavations have revealed that Göbekli Tepe is far larger than initially believed. Only a fraction of it has been unearthed. Ground-penetrating radar shows dozens of additional enclosures still buried. Beneath the soil lie centuries of human intent, layer upon layer of ritual. Each discovery expands the mystery instead of solving it. The deeper archaeologists dig, the further back the story seems to stretch. What if Göbekli Tepe was not the beginning, but the echo of something even older? Some of the stone motifs resemble those found in far later cultures. Serpents like those carved in Mayan temples, vultures like those in Egyptian tombs, and twin pillars that recall the sacred gates of Mesopotamia. Could this be coincidence, or a memory passed down through time from an age before the flood? The possibility lingers, haunting in its suggestion that all of civilization might be the distant inheritance of a world that came before. At night, under the Turkish stars, the site feels alive. The stones catch the moonlight and seem to watch back. The wind moves softly through the excavation trenches, whispering through the hollows where rituals once took place. Archaeologists have called it humbling, even unsettling. There is an awareness there, a sense that humanity has brushed against something it cannot yet comprehend. The past feels closer than ever, yet still out of reach. Göbekli Tepe does not fit comfortably within history books because it refuses to stay still. It sits between science and myth, like a secret meant to be rediscovered only when the world was ready. Every carving, every pillar, every buried wall seems to whisper the same silent message. We were here long before you believed we could be. And perhaps, as the earth slowly gives up its secrets, Göbekli Tepe stands as both a question and a mirror, a monument reminding us that civilization's true beginning may not be where we think, but buried beneath the dust of forgotten ages, waiting for the next awakening of human memory. The Sumerian antediluvian kings. Long before the rise of Babylon, before Egypt raised its first obelisks and the Indus Valley traced its streets in dust, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates held memories of a forgotten age. The Sumerians called it the time before the flood, an epoch ruled not by men as we know them, but by beings whose reigns stretched into the thousands of years. Their names, carved into clay, form one of humanity's oldest records, and one of its deepest enigmas. This is the story of the antediluvian kings. The tale begins with a list, a simple sequence of names and numbers etched into tablets more than 4,000 years ago. Yet those numbers are impossible. Alulim, the first king of Eridu, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years, his successor Alangar for 36,000. Others followed, Enmenluana, Enmengalana, Dumuzid the shepherd, each reigning for spans that defy comprehension. Then, the text says calmly, the flood came and the kingship was taken to heaven. At first glance, it reads like myth, but unlike the poetic verses of later civilizations, the Sumerian king list presents itself as history, precise, administrative, deliberate. It catalogues rulers and cities, divides the world into ages, and transitions seamlessly from the impossible reigns of divine kings to the shorter human reigns that follow the flood. That shift has puzzled scholars for centuries. Why record something so implausible with such bureaucratic care? Eridu, where the list begins, was long thought to be purely legendary. Then archaeologists found it, layers of temples stacked upon one another, each older than the last, reaching back to nearly 5,400 BCE. It is the earliest known city in Mesopotamia, and perhaps the first in the world. The phrase implies a transfer, a divine bestowal of rule, not a human invention. Civilization, according to the Sumerians, was a gift from gods who once walked among men. Every culture remembers such beings. The Egyptians had their Neteru. The Maya spoke of their gods who came from the stars. The Greeks wrote of titans who ruled before Zeus. Their long reigns could represent dynasties or symbolic cycles of celestial time. Yet some researchers have wondered whether they reflect something more literal, a memory of a world before the flood, when lifespans, knowledge and power were not bound by the limits of modern humanity. In the dusty halls of the Iraq Museum lies one of the oldest tablets containing the king list, its wedge-shaped inscriptions worn but legible. Scholars debate its meaning endlessly. Others argue the list preserves fragments of genuine oral tradition, a dim recollection of rulers from a forgotten civilization that perished at the end of the last ice age. Around 10,800 BCE, global sea levels rose dramatically. Massive floods swept across river valleys as glaciers melted. For ancient survivors, such an event could easily have been remembered as the flood that ended kingship. The Sumerians believed that after the deluge, order had to be restored. Kingship descended again from heaven, this time to Kish, the first city of the New World. The list continues with shorter reigns, increasingly realistic in duration. But even then, whispers of the old world remained. Myths like that of Zusudra, the Sumerian Noah, tell of a chosen man who built a vessel, survived the flood, and was granted immortality by the gods. The story later reappeared in Babylonian and biblical form, its details shifting but its essence unchanged. Something had indeed been remembered. Yet Göbekli Tepe, far to the northwest, predates Sumer by 6,000 years. Its builders carved monumental stones before agriculture, before writing. Could these two worlds be connected? Could the flood that closed Göbekli Tepe's age also have been the deluge remembered by the Sumerians? The timelines overlap with an uncanny precision. The more one studies the king list, the stranger it becomes. Its structure is mathematical, almost astronomical. Some scholars note that the combined reigns of the 8 antediluvian kings total a number divisible by 60, the sacred base of the Sumerian numerical system, itself possibly derived from their observations of the heavens. 60 was the number of Anu, the sky god. It symbolized cosmic order. Could the king list be a coded calendar marking celestial epochs rather than mortal years? If so, then the kings may represent not individuals but ages, the reigns of divine principles each governing a phase of human awakening before the flood reset the world. In this interpretation, the descent of kingship becomes a metaphor for the descent of knowledge, the moment when the heavens gifted humanity with the art of rule, architecture, and writing. Whether literal or symbolic, the text insists that civilization began twice. What remains most haunting is the Sumerians' calm certainty. They wrote not as poets or dreamers but as record keepers, confident that what they inscribed was truth. In a world where we search endlessly for origins, they claim to already know them, that their lineage stretched back to a time when gods ruled the earth. The king list, for all its brevity, holds within it a vision of history that begins long before our own, a vision that refuses to fade even in the face of modern skepticism. When night falls over the ruins of Eridu, the air grows still. Somewhere beneath the sand lies the memory of a time when kings were not yet human, when the flood had not yet cleansed the earth of its first civilizations, and as archaeologists brush away each layer of clay, the question grows heavier, not lighter. If the Sumerians remembered a world before the flood, ruled by immortals and drowned beneath rising waters, then perhaps their list was not myth, but a fragment of a truth too vast for history to contain. The Zep Tepi civilization of ancient Egypt. Before the first pharaoh raised a crown, before the pyramids pierced the desert sky, there was a time the Egyptians called Zep Tepi, the first time. It was an era when the gods themselves were said to have walked among mortals, when knowledge descended from the heavens, and when the Nile's banks shimmered not with sand, but with the memory of a lost golden age. According to temple inscriptions and ancient texts like the Pyramid Texts and the Book of the Dead, Zep Tepi was no metaphor. It was a period that marked the very beginning of civilization, the moment the world was reborn from chaos after a great flood. The gods, led by Atum and Thoth, were said to have emerged from the primordial waters of Nun to establish Ma'at, the order that governs the cosmos. The temples of Luxor, Edfu, and Abydos preserve strange echoes of this forgotten age. Their walls speak of divine builders who erected monumental structures before the first dynasties. Inscriptions on the Temple of Edfu describe an island destroyed by catastrophe, a homeland of the gods that sank beneath the waters before Zep Tepi began. Survivors, led by Horus, were said to have journeyed to the Nile Valley, where they re-established the order of the world. Even the pyramids may hint at this inheritance. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands aligned with true north to an accuracy unmatched by later structures, its dimensions reflecting the geometry of the planet itself. It is a machine of stone, precise, deliberate, timeless. To them, it was already ancient, a monument from the gods of Zep Tepi, standing as a testament to divine wisdom. The Sphinx, too, weathered by ages of wind and rain, may have been a relic of that same epoch. Geological studies suggest erosion patterns that predate the dynastic era by thousands of years, pointing to a construction date long before recorded history. If true, then the builders of Zep Tepi were not mythical beings, but the survivors of an advanced culture lost to Cataclysm, a people who carried fragments of their knowledge into the dawn of human civilization. The flood that ended their age echoes in myths around the world, in Sumer's Deluge, in Noah's Ark, in the tales of the gods retreating from Earth. For centuries, Egyptologists dismissed these stories as symbolic, but the deeper one looks, the more the symbols seem to conceal a pattern of truth. The first time could represent a literal rebirth after disaster, when survivors of a prehistoric world rebuilt what they had lost. Some researchers have even suggested a link between Zep Tepi and the lost lands of Atlantis or Lemuria, civilizations that, according to legend, vanished beneath the sea long before the pharaohs took the throne. While such theories remain outside mainstream academia, they persist because of one undeniable fact. The sophistication of early Egypt seems to appear fully formed, as though inherited, not invented. Nowhere is that sense of inheritance more profound than in Abydos. Deep within the Temple of Seti lies the mysterious Assyrian, a subterranean structure built from colossal granite blocks, its walls smooth and undecorated, its architecture starkly different from anything of its supposed time. It sits below the temple, as though belonging to a much earlier era. Some archaeologists believe it predates Seti's temple by thousands of years. The Assyrian, aligned with sacred geometry and once surrounded by water, evokes the imagery of Zep Tepi itself, the first land emerging from the flood. The priests of ancient Egypt preserved their history not in years, but in dynasties of gods. They spoke of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, semi-divine beings who ruled for thousands of years before the first mortal king. In their records, these beings taught writing, agriculture, and astronomy, guiding humanity through its rebirth. The Turin Papyrus, one of Egypt's oldest king lists, supports this timeline, describing pre-dynastic rulers whose reigns stretched impossibly long. What if these were not mythic deities, but the cultural memory of leaders from a lost civilization whose wisdom birthed Egypt itself? The alignment of Egypt's ancient monuments deepens the mystery. The three pyramids of Giza mirror the belt stars of Orion, a constellation the Egyptians associated with Osiris. The god who died, was resurrected, and ruled the afterlife. The Sphinx gazes toward the rising sun of Leo, as if marking a celestial event that occurred not in the time of the pharaohs, but around 10,500 BCE, the end of the last ice age, when catastrophic floods reshaped the earth. To some, this astronomical alignment is no coincidence. It may be the silent testimony of Zep Tepi itself, encoded in stone so that future ages would not forget. Modern Egyptology, cautious and methodical, continues to frame Zep Tepi as mythology. Yet, as ancient texts resurface and modern science uncovers anomalies in the age of monuments, the distance between myth and history grows narrower. The Egyptians were not a culture of exaggeration. Their precision in mathematics, astronomy, and symbolism suggests intention in everything they recorded. If they insisted their civilization began under the guidance of gods, perhaps the truth lies not in dismissing the claim, but in understanding who or what those gods truly were. The sands of Egypt have a peculiar silence. They seem to guard their secrets jealously, yielding only fragments of truth at a time. Every new discovery, from the hidden chambers within the Great Pyramid to the unexplored tunnels beneath the Sphinx, adds another layer to the enigma rather than solving it. And perhaps that is the point. Zep Tepi is not merely a chapter of history, but a mirror reflecting our own forgotten beginnings. For in the end, Egypt's oldest story is not about gods or monuments, but about memory. The memory of when the divine walked beside the human, and the sun rose on a world newly reborn. The Ubaid culture, reptilian figures of the deep past. There are places in the world where silence feels older than time. The winds that move over southern Mesopotamia carry whispers of such a place, a land of marshes, temples and clay, where the earliest traces of civilization flickered long before Sumer rose from the plains. Long before written language, before kings or empires, there was the Ubaid culture. Its people left behind no great monuments, no elaborate myths carved in stone. Yet from the depths of their settlements, archaeologists unearthed something unsettling. Figures with long, narrow heads and serpent-like eyes that seemed to belong to another world. It began in the late 19th century, when excavations at Eridu, one of the oldest known cities on Earth, revealed pottery fragments and strange figurines buried in the layers beneath later Sumerian ruins. These figures were small, carved from clay or stone, and bore the unmistakable features of reptiles. Their faces were elongated, their eyes almond-shaped, and their bodies human. Some cradled infants with the same reptilian features, suggesting a lineage or race that existed outside human myth. To some, they were symbols of fertility or protection. To others, they were the last physical echoes of beings who predated recorded history. The Ubaid people are often described as the foundation upon which Sumer was built. Their settlements appeared around 6,500 BCE, stretching across Mesopotamia and into the Persian Gulf. They mastered irrigation, built temples, and developed pottery styles that would influence countless cultures after them. But while their technology and organization suggest sophistication, the purpose and symbolism of those reptilian idols do not fit neatly within the expected arc of human development. The more archaeologists uncovered, the stranger the story became. At first, scholars dismissed the figures as stylized art, abstract representations of gods or spirits. Yet over time, the consistency of their features made coincidence difficult to accept. Each figure shared the same characteristics: smooth, scaled skin, slanted eyes, and elongated skulls. These were not random artistic experiments. They were deliberate, precise, and eerily consistent across sites separated by miles and centuries. Who then were these figures meant to depict? Some researchers suggested they represented mythic beings tied to water, spirits or deities of creation that emerged from the marshes like Enki, the later Sumerian god of the deep. The association between water and life was powerful in Mesopotamia, where survival depended on the fickle rhythm of rivers. Perhaps these lizard-like beings symbolized fertility, abundance, or the dual nature of creation itself, the balance between chaos and order, between the wild and the civilized. But others see something more provocative. The precision of the carvings, the strange inhuman details, and the connection to the earliest settlements of humankind have inspired theories that stretch beyond archaeology. Some propose that the Ubaid encountered, or descended from, beings not of this earth. Ancient astronaut theorists point to the recurring serpent and reptile symbolism found across world mythologies, from the feathered serpents of Mesoamerica to the Naga of India and the dragon kings of China. Could these figures represent the earliest depictions of an ancient global memory, one that recalls a time when non-human intelligences walked among the first cities? Such ideas are controversial, of course. Mainstream scholars warn against mixing speculation with science. Yet even those grounded in evidence admit the Ubaid culture raises unsettling questions. Why do their earliest temples appear fully formed, with no visible developmental stages before them? How did such an organized society emerge seemingly out of nowhere, only to vanish just as mysteriously? And why did their artistic style, so distinctive and alien, disappear completely once Sumer rose? The ruins of Eridu offer quiet clues. Beneath layers of later construction, archaeologists found the remains of a single temple, rebuilt repeatedly over thousands of years on the same sacred spot. Each iteration grew more elaborate, suggesting that the people were preserving something ancient, something worth venerating long after its origin had faded from memory. According to Sumerian legend, Eridu was the first city founded by the gods themselves after they descended from the heavens. If that myth has roots in truth, then perhaps the Ubaid were not simply the ancestors of civilization, they were the keepers of its first contact with the divine. In the humid stillness of southern Iraq, the ground continues to shift. New findings occasionally surface, fragments of clay tablets, mysterious seals, or traces of settlements along what was once the ancient shoreline. Each discovery extends the timeline of human history further back and deepens the enigma of who the Ubaid truly were. Were they the first humans to dream of gods, or were they remembering something real, something their ancestors had witnessed before the flood swept away the world? The most haunting question lingers not in the artifacts, but in the expressions carved upon them. The reptilian figures do not appear monstrous or malevolent. They seem serene, almost maternal. Their eyes do not glare but watch. Their thin lips seem poised between speech and silence, as if they know something we have long forgotten. When night falls over Eridu, the desert cools and the stars return. The same stars the Ubaid once traced with wonder. To gaze at them now is to glimpse the same mystery that filled those ancient skies. Whether their figures depict gods, ancestors, or something beyond human comprehension, the truth remains buried beneath millennia of dust and denial. Carrying the memory of beings who walked between worlds, The Ubaid culture may have left us reptilian faces that are not symbols of the past, but reflections of a truth waiting to be remembered. Tiwanaku, the high-altitude civilization out of time. The winds that sweep across the Bolivian altiplano carry a chill that feels ancient, as if it has never forgotten what once stood here. At nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, where the air is thin and the horizon seems to touch eternity, lie the ruins of Tiwanaku, or Tiwanaku as archaeologists spell it today. Its megalithic stones rest in silent defiance of time, each one carved and placed with precision that modern engineers still struggle to explain. Here, amid the desolate plains and the shadow of Lake Titicaca, a mystery older than history itself lies half buried beneath the sun and wind. The site looks deceptively simple at first: terraces, courtyards, and blocks scattered across the plateau. Yet the closer one looks, the more impossible it seems. Stones weighing up to 100 tons are fitted together with mathematical perfection. Some are andesite, quarried and transported from miles away across rugged terrain. Others are carved with sharp, precise edges that even diamond tools today would find difficult to replicate. And yet the people who supposedly built Tiwanaku, the ancestors of the Aymara, had no written language, no iron, and no wheels. Archaeologists have long debated the site's age. Conventional dating places its peak around 500 to 900 CE. But early researchers like Arthur Poznański, who studied the ruins for decades, claimed it was far older, perhaps more than 12,000 years old, predating even the rise of Egypt and Sumer. He based this on astronomical alignments in the structures, particularly the gateway of the sun, which he believed once matched the position of the stars in a distant epoch before a cataclysm altered Earth's axis. If he was right, then Tiwanaku was not just an ancient city, but a remnant of a world before the flood, a civilization out of time. The Gateway of the Sun stands as the most iconic monument of the site. Carved from a single massive block of stone, it bears intricate reliefs depicting a central figure surrounded by winged beings and geometric patterns. Scholars call the central figure Viracocha, the great crater god of Andean mythology. According to legend, Viracocha emerged from the waters of Lake Titicaca after a great deluge, bringing light and civilization to a darkened world. He shaped humanity from clay, taught them wisdom, and vanished, promising to return one day. Such myths echo across the ancient world, gods descending after cataclysms, teaching knowledge, and leaving behind silent monuments. Could Tiwanaku be the physical memory of such an encounter? Some researchers think so. The precision of the architecture, the complex engineering of the drainage systems, and the advanced understanding of astronomy all point to a society far ahead of its supposed time. Beneath the Akapana pyramid, for instance, lies a sophisticated network of channels designed to control the flow of water, not for irrigation, but for ceremonial or perhaps energetic purposes. The structure itself mirrors celestial patterns, its steps aligning with the solstices and equinoxes. It is as if the builders sought to bind heaven and earth into one great design. Yet the mystery deepens when one considers what surrounds the site. Nearby, at Pumapunku, lie blocks of stone so finely cut that they resemble machine fabrication. Their interlocking joints and right angles defy explanation. Some weigh over 100 tons, yet they were shaped with such delicacy that even a razor blade could not slip between their seams. To this day, no one knows what tools could have achieved such work at this altitude in a time when metallurgy was supposedly primitive. And then there are the carvings. Stylized figures with square faces, large eyes, and hands holding strange objects. Some appear to wear helmets or carry devices that look eerily mechanical. Others depict animals not native to the Andes, as if the artist remembered creatures from another age. Whether these were mythic symbols or literal memories remains uncertain, but the resemblance to pre-flood imagery found in other continents cannot be ignored. The people who live near Tiwanaku today still regard the site with reverence. They say it was built by the gods, long before the sun first rose over these mountains. According to Aymara tradition, the first race of humans, the giants, perished in a great flood, and Viracocha created a new humanity from their remains. Some believe the ruins are what's left of that first world. Modern science, of course, is cautious. Radiocarbon dating, soil analysis, and stratigraphy suggest that the site's oldest layers may be much younger than Poznański proposed. Yet even conservative estimates struggle to explain the sophistication of its design. How could a society with limited technology create something so enduring, so precise, and so aligned with cosmic principles? There is also the riddle of Lake Titicaca itself. Geologists have found evidence that the area once stood at sea level before the land was thrust upward by immense tectonic forces. Fossilized seashells still cling to rocks near the lake's edge. If Tiwanaku was built before this upheaval, its age could indeed reach back to a time when a different world existed, one erased by water and reborn under new skies. Every year, researchers return to the plateau with new instruments and theories. They scan the ruins with lasers, measure alignments, and search for hidden chambers beneath the stones. Yet, the answers remain elusive. It is as if the site itself resists being understood, guarding the memory of an era when knowledge flowed from unknown hands. At dawn, when the first light spills over the Andes and strikes the gateway of the sun, the carved god seems to awaken, his eyes catching the glow of eternity. In that brief moment, the silence of Tiwanaku feels alive, not abandoned but waiting. If these high-altitude stones truly belong to a world before ours, then Tiwanaku may not just be a ruin, but a reminder that civilization has risen and fallen more than once beneath the watchful eyes of the mountains. Sundaland, the drowned civilization of Southeast Asia. Beneath the turquoise calm of the Java Sea lies a continent that once breathed under open sky. Its rivers carved valleys, its mountains shouldered clouds, and its people built lives along shorelines that no longer exist. Today, fishermen drag their nets over the ruins of that world, a place scholars call Sundaland, a vanished cradle of civilization now drowned beneath the waves. The story begins not in myth, but in the deep pulse of geology. At the height of the last ice age, sea levels were more than 100 meters lower. The islands we now know as Indonesia, Borneo, Sumatra, and the Malay Peninsula were bound together in a single vast landmass, stretching from the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. Then, as the ice melted, the oceans rose, and the heart of that land was swallowed whole. Coastlines retreated, rivers turned to bays, and the map of the world redrew itself, erasing an entire landscape, and perhaps a civilization with it. Far below the surface, sonar scans have revealed what appear to be ancient river systems, stone structures, and geometrically shaped terraces lying in silence beneath the waves. Near the coasts of Java and Sumatra, divers have recovered artifacts, carved stones, work tools, from depths that defy easy explanation. Each find whispers the same unsettling question: who lived here before the flood? Scholars once dismissed the idea of an advanced culture in Southeast Asia's deep past. Civilization, they argued, began in Mesopotamia, far from these tropical waters. Yet the discoveries across the submerged Sunda Shelf are forcing a slow reconsideration. If humans once built villages here when the seas were low, then those villages were lost not to time but to water. And the survivors? They would have fled inland and upward, carrying fragments of memory, stories of a world that sank. In the tides of myth, those memories endure. Across Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, old stories speak of a great flood that tore the world apart. The Javanese tell of a sea that rose in a single night. The Malay annals recall a vanished kingdom whose temples once touched the stars. Even in far-off India, there are echoes, legends of Lemuria, the lost southern land. Could all of these point, however faintly, to the same cataclysm? To the untrained eye, Sundaland appears to be just another drowned plain. But to those who listen closely, to geologists, linguists, and mythologists alike, it hums with old patterns. The languages of Southeast Asia share traces of a forgotten root tongue, older than Sanskrit or Chinese, scattered like seeds by migrating peoples. Some believe these linguistic ghosts could be remnants of a single ancient culture, one that vanished beneath the sea but left its imprint on everything that followed. The evidence deepens with every expedition. Off the coast of Singapore, researchers have mapped what looks like a massive paleo river delta, a place where once fresh water met the ocean. Near Borneo, sonar has revealed a circular formation, eerily regular, as though shaped by human hands. And at Gunung Padang, a mysterious hilltop site in western Java, excavations have uncovered layered stone terraces that predate any known Indonesian civilization by tens of thousands of years. Some scientists argue these are natural formations. Others whisper that they are the last peaks of Sundaland itself, temples built before the flood. The debate is fierce, for the implications are vast. If an ancient maritime culture once thrived here, it would rewrite the timeline of human civilization. It would suggest that humanity's first great societies may have risen not on dry plains, but along the coasts, drawn to the edge of the sea where trade, travel and myth converged. And when the waters rose, those same coasts would have become graves, preserving the ruins of our earliest cities beneath layers of sand and coral. Yet there is something almost poetic in Sundaland's disappearance. The ocean that buried it also protected it. Unlike cities left to crumble in wind and sun, these ruins rest in a cool, soundless archive, untouched by centuries of conquest or decay. The sea, in a strange way, became the civilization's tomb and its guardian. Some researchers now refer to Sundaland as the Asian Atlantis, but that comparison feels too small. Atlantis is a story of punishment, a moral allegory of hubris and divine wrath. Sundaland, by contrast, feels more like a memory of mourning. It speaks not of arrogance, but of loss, of people watching their world dissolve day by day, their mountains turning to islands, their fields to lagoons, their gods to silence. In that silence, one can almost imagine their last days, families loading boats with what little they could carry, priests chanting to the retreating shore, elders marking the water's rise on stones that would soon be gone. Perhaps somewhere in the dense forests of Borneo or the volcanic ridges of Java, their descendants still carry fragments of that story, encoded in myth, song or ritual, not as history, but as remembrance. The idea of Sundaland unsettles because it reminds us how fragile civilization truly is. The land beneath our feet is not eternal. Continents drown, cultures vanish, and what we call beginnings may only be the survivors' new beginnings after catastrophe. The Earth remembers in layers: ice, silt, coral, each one a page in a book that humans rarely get to read. Somewhere under shifting tides, Sundaland still waits, a silent cradle of humanity lost to the sea but not to time. The Gulf of Kambat ruins, India's sunken metropolis. It began with a hum, not from the sea, but from a machine. In 2001, a survey vessel skimming the restless surface of the Gulf of Kambat sent pulses of sound deep into the dark. The sonar waves returned strange echoes, geometric shadows, clusters of right angles, patterns that nature rarely makes. At first, the crew thought it was a glitch, an artifact of poor readings, but when the image steadied, a series of symmetrical mounds, lines like roads, the room fell silent. The data was sent ashore, where it landed on the desks of archaeologists and oceanographers who didn't know what to do with it. The formations appeared nearly 40 meters below sea level, a place that would have been dry land more than 9,000 years ago. If the images were genuine, they hinted at something impossible, a structured settlement that predated every known civilization in India. When the divers went down, the water fought them at every turn. Visibility was nearly zero, the currents twisted like live wire. Still, fragments came up. Pieces of stone that looked shaped, pottery shards embedded in hardened silt, beads smoothed by time. Samples of wood and charcoal recovered from the site were sent for carbon dating. The results came back older than anyone expected, 9,500 years. It was a date that didn't fit anywhere in the accepted timeline of human civilization. The announcement sent ripples through the scientific community. Headlines called it India's Atlantis. Scholars called it a mistake. The seabed, they argued, was prone to geological trickery, old river channels, natural formations, sediments that mimic architecture. Yet there were those who refused to dismiss it. They saw in the scans and fragments the outline of something profound, a city that had existed long before history had words to describe it. What troubled the skeptics most wasn't the evidence itself, but what it implied. If there truly had been a civilization in Kambat before 7000 BCE, it would rewrite the entire story of the rise of culture in South Asia. Agriculture, trade, architecture, all would have taken root long before the Indus Valley and Sumer. Humanity's first metropolis might not have risen in Mesopotamia after all, but here, on the drowned shelf of the Indian coast. The government authorized further surveys. New sonar sweeps mapped an even wider area, grids stretching for miles, with features resembling streets, foundations and platforms. Each discovery came with more uncertainty. The deeper the scientists looked, the less they could agree on what they were seeing. Traces of organised life emerge from the silt. Some stone alignments suggest streets or pathways, while clusters of pottery shards hint at dwellings or workshops. The presence of standardised weights, tools and beads indicates a society with trade, craft specialisation and social organisation. Even underwater, the layout seems intentional, with patterns that mirror later urban planning in civilizations thousands of years younger. These subtle clues suggest that the people of Kambat, or their predecessors, possessed knowledge of construction, measurement, and perhaps even governance that challenges our understanding of prehistoric societies. In the quiet between expeditions, a different kind of voice began to surface, the voice of myth. Ancient Sanskrit texts, some older than written memory, told of a flood that reshaped the world. The Satapatha Brahmana spoke of Manu, a wise man warned by a sacred fish to build a boat before the waters rose. When the flood came, Manu's vessel drifted to safety, carrying the seeds of a new world. Many saw these stories as metaphors for natural events, but others wondered if they were memories, encoded fragments of real cities lost to the sea. Then came the legends of Dwarka, the city of Lord Krishna, described as radiant and immense, filled with golden towers and shining gates. It was said that when Krishna departed the world, the sea swallowed his city whole. For centuries the story was dismissed as mythology, until divers off the coast of Gujarat discovered submerged walls and streets that matched the descriptions almost exactly. The Gulf of Kambat lies not far from those waters. Some began to whisper that Dwarka was only one of many, a network of luminous cities built before the Deluge. But the ocean is a patient guardian. Each attempt to uncover Kambat's ruins met with storms, shifting tides, and the relentless pull of sediment. Even high-resolution mapping yielded contradictions. One scan would show clean geometry, the next a muddled slope of stone. It was as though the sea itself was blurring the lines, keeping the secret intact. And still the fragments spoke. Microlithic tools, polished beads, patterns on clay, all signs of a people who understood art, trade and time. How could such sophistication exist millennia before civilization was thought to begin? Was Kambat truly a city or the faint footprint of something older, perhaps even remembered across generations as the world before the flood? On the decks of research ships, scientists still argue over the data. In coastal temples, priests still tell the story of the flood. Between them lies a silence neither side can fill, the gap between science and memory, between what we can measure and what we can only sense. Sometimes, during low tide, the sea in the Gulf recedes farther than expected, revealing sandbanks and strange rock patterns that vanish again by dusk. Locals say you can hear a faint vibration if you listen long enough, a hum beneath the water, deep and steady like something ancient breathing in its sleep. When the tide turns over the Gulf of Kambat, it is said the sea hums softly, as if remembering the pulse of a city that once breathed beneath it. Yonaguni, Japan's underwater pyramid builders. The diver descends into the blue silence where sunlight dissolves before it touches the stone. Below, a shape emerges, vast, angular, and unnervingly precise. Steps carved from solid rock cascade downward like a staircase to another world. The sea presses close, its weight almost reverent, as if guarding something it barely remembers. When the underwater plateau off the coast of Yonaguni was first discovered in 1986, few could imagine what the currents were hiding. Fishermen had long spoken of strange formations beneath the waves, but when divers finally brought cameras, the images that surfaced astonished the world. Gigantic terraces, flat platforms, and perfectly cut right angles formed a structure that looked less like geology and more like architecture. Geologists called it natural erosion, sandstone sculpted by millennia of tides and earthquakes, but others saw a monument. The site's stepped pyramids, corridors, and carved faces suggested a hand that understood geometry and intention. The debate would soon divide experts across the globe, not just over the site's origin, but over what it meant for human history. From above, the monument appears deliberate. Massive blocks stack into a formation more than 150 metres long, with ledges, ramps, and what some claim is a grand stairway leading to a ceremonial platform. The lines are sharp, unnaturally consistent. Divers describe the sensation of swimming through a sunken city, an amphitheatre here, an altar there, a doorway leading nowhere. Yet no ancient Japanese text speaks of a civilization that could have built it. The waters around Yonaguni are notoriously volatile. Strong currents tear through the site, making exploration dangerous. Yet even in those treacherous depths, carvings appear, shapes that resemble eyes, symbols etched into the walls, and what some believe to be animal figures. Whether these are markings of nature or the last expressions of a forgotten culture remains uncertain. But for those who have seen them up close, the impression is unmistakable. Someone once shaped this stone. One of the earliest champions of that idea was Professor Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist who spent decades mapping the underwater ruins. He identified what he believed were temples, roads, and even a stadium. His conclusion was daring, that the site was the remains of an ancient city possibly more than 10,000 years old, submerged when sea levels rose after the last ice age. To Kimura, Yonaguni was proof that Japan once harboured a civilization as old as Atlantis or Mu. His peers were not convinced. They pointed to the sandstone's natural fracturing patterns and to the island's seismic activity, which can split and shear rock into eerily geometric forms. The human eye, they argued, has a tendency to find meaning in symmetry, to see temples where there are only cliffs. But the divers who returned from Yonaguni spoke of details too refined, too intentional to be coincidence. Steps of equal height, corners cut at perfect right angles, platforms smoothed as if for ritual. What makes Yonaguni even more enigmatic is its connection to the wider mythic landscape of the Pacific. Legends across Japan tell of a time before the flood, when gods and humans coexisted and vast kingdoms sank beneath rising seas. The Okinawan people speak of Rugujo, the palace of the sea god, a city of coral and stone that lies far below the waves. Scholars dismiss the comparison, but the resemblance in imagery is striking, a palace beneath the sea guarded by time. The deeper divers venture, the more questions surface. Some claim to have seen a colossal face carved into the rock, its eyes hollow, its expression unreadable. Others report tunnels and passages leading into darkness. The currents shift constantly, making it impossible to map every part of the structure. It's as if the monument wants to be seen, but never fully understood. Clues hint at an intelligence older than recorded history. Some terraces and channels suggest a sophisticated understanding of water management, drainage, and structural integrity, far beyond what a post-Ice Age coastal culture would be expected to know. Evidence of deliberate levelling, angled cuts for stability, and stone arrangements that align with celestial events implies that whoever shaped Yonaguni possessed knowledge of engineering and astronomy possibly inherited from an earlier, vanished civilization. These patterns, repeated across the Pacific in other megalithic sites, hint that Yonaguni may not be an isolated anomaly, but part of a network of pre-flood knowledge preserved beneath the waves. In recent years, high-definition scans and drone imaging have given us clearer views than ever before. The lines are real, the proportions uncanny. Still, the scientific verdict remains cautious. Erosion, earthquakes, imagination. No definitive proof of human construction has emerged, only the enduring sense that something extraordinary waits in the deep. Some have connected Yonaguni to the lost continent of Mu, said to have spanned the Pacific before vanishing in catastrophe. Others link it to flood legends that echo across Asia and the Americas. If such a civilization once existed, Yonaguni might be one of its last surviving ruins, its memory suspended beneath the tide. The idea is romantic, impossible, and strangely persistent. Above the water, the island remains quiet. Waves crash against the cliffs, and the horizon stretches empty, as if the sea has swallowed not just a city, but a chapter of human memory. Divers still descend every year, searching for a sign, a tool mark, an inscription, anything that would turn myth into history. Each returns with wonder in their voice and salt on their skin, certain only of one thing, the feeling that something down there is watching them back. In the end, the question may not be whether the Yonaguni monument was carved or born, but why it continues to call us downward, as if some part of us remembers what the sea forgot. Baalbek, the Titan builders of Lebanon. High in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, where mountains cradle the sky and ancient winds seem to whisper through the stones, stands a place that defies comprehension. Baalbek, known to the Romans as Heliopolis, the city of the sun, appears at first glance to be just another grand ruin, another testament to imperial ambition. Yet beneath its towering columns and sunlit courtyards lies a deeper enigma. Stones so immense, so flawlessly cut and placed that even modern engineers can scarcely fathom how they were moved. At the heart of Baalbek rests the Temple of Jupiter, or rather what remains of it, 6 colossal columns reaching almost 20 metres high, each weighing hundreds of tons. But what truly captures the imagination are not these pillars of marble and granite, but the titanic foundation beneath them. The platform on which the Roman temple stands is composed of 3 gargantuan stones, known collectively as the Trilithon. Each block weighs approximately 800 tons, cut with such precision that not even a blade can slip between them. Below these, even larger stones lie half-buried, one of them, the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, estimated to weigh over 1,000 tons. Archaeologists for centuries have attributed Baalbek's monumental base to Roman craftsmanship. Yet, there's a problem with that narrative. The Romans were master builders, yes, but nowhere else in their vast empire did they employ stones of such monstrous size. Their architectural genius was in design and form, not in megalithic construction. So, who lifted these giants into place before the Romans arrived? And why build on such a scale that even time itself seems hesitant to erode it? Some suggest that Baalbek's foundation predates Rome by thousands of years, perhaps by civilizations long forgotten. The blocks might have once formed part of an even older temple, one built by a race with knowledge lost to us. Ancient legends call this place the dwelling of the gods. In Canaanite tradition, it was sacred to Baal, the storm and fertility deity who reigned from the heavens. Later in Greek mythology, it became associated with Helios, the sun god. But deeper still, older myths whisper of the Anunnaki, the divine beings who descended from the sky in the age before the flood. Some researchers have speculated that Baalbek might have been one of their landing platforms, a place where gods and mortals once met. The sheer scale of Baalbek invites such speculation. Moving a 1,000-ton stone, even with today's technology, would require cranes and transport systems of immense complexity. To lift and place it with precision thousands of years ago borders on the impossible. Yet, here they stand, aligned, level, immovable. Engineers have tried to reconstruct how it could have been done, with wooden rollers, with levers, with armies of men and beasts. But calculations crumble under the weight of those stones. The wood would splinter, the ropes would snap, the ground itself would buckle. And then there is the question of why. Why build with stones so immense that no practical purpose could justify their use? The Romans didn't need them for stability. Their own structures, from the Colosseum to the Pantheon, were marvels of efficiency. Could it be that the builders of Baalbek were following instructions older than memory? Perhaps echoing a design that served a purpose beyond human understanding? The landscape around Baalbek adds another layer to the mystery. The valley once formed part of an ancient trade route connecting Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. It was a crossroads of gods and empires. Yet Baalbek's position on this plateau seems deliberate, almost celestial. Some researchers have noted that the site aligns with key solar and stellar points, suggesting it might once have served as an astronomical observatory or even a place of energy concentration. The City of the Sun, it seems, was not just a poetic name. Excavations have revealed layer upon layer of occupation, Roman, Greek, Phoenician, and older still, but beneath it all, the original builders remain unknown. The tools they used, the methods they employed, the purpose they served, all vanished into the mists of prehistory. The deeper one digs, the older the stones seem to become, as if Baalbek were built not by a single culture, but by a succession of civilizations, each trying to claim or understand what had come before. Local legends still speak of giants who once walked the land. The Phoenicians believed that Baalbek had been constructed by the Titans after the Great Flood, using stones the size of mountains to rebuild their city. In Islamic tradition, it is said that King Solomon commanded the jinn, supernatural beings of fire and air, to build Baalbek for his queen. In every version, divine or superhuman hands are invoked, as if ordinary men could not possibly have done it. Standing before the Trilithon, it's easy to see why such stories endure. The blocks radiate a kind of silent defiance, a message carved not in words but in weight and endurance. They are not merely remnants of a temple, they are the bones of a forgotten age, a monument to an ambition that transcends reason. Scientists continue to probe Baalbek's secrets. ground-penetrating surveys hint at chambers and tunnels beneath the site, perhaps leading to even older foundations. Some fringe researchers suggest that Baalbek stones vibrate at specific frequencies, part of an ancient technology lost to time. Whether one believes these claims or not, there is something undeniably otherworldly about standing among those stones, feeling the ground hum with their presence. Night at Baalbek is different. When the sun sinks behind the mountains and the stars emerge, the columns become silhouettes against a violet sky. The silence feels deliberate, like the breath held between two moments of history. In that stillness, one can almost imagine the distant echo of chants, the flicker of torches, the rumble of unseen machinery lifting the impossible into place. Whatever Baalbek once was, a temple, a fortress, a gateway, it continues to mock the limits of our understanding. Its stones do not yield their story easily. Doggerland, the North Sea civilization. There was once a time when the North Sea was not a sea at all. Where waves now roll and ships cut across grey waters, there stretched a vast expanse of green plains, winding rivers, and dense forest teeming with life. It was a bridge between Britain and Europe, a world forgotten by history, buried not by time but by the sea itself. That world was Doggerland. It began as a place of abundance. Archaeologists describe it as a hunter's paradise, a region rich in game, fish, and fertile soil. Evidence suggests that nomadic tribes once roamed this lost landscape between 10,000 and 8,000 BCE, building small settlements along riverbanks and coastal marshes. Mammoth tusks, tools of flint, and remnants of human habitation have been dredged up from the seafloor, fragments of a story that challenges our sense of time. Doggerland was not a barren tundra but a thriving land, an ancient Eden beneath the waves. Its existence was rediscovered almost by accident. Fishermen working the North Sea began hauling up strange things in their nets, ancient bones, antlers, and occasionally carved tools. These discoveries puzzled scientists until sonar mapping revealed the ghostly outline of valleys, hills, and river systems lying hundreds of feet below the surface. What emerged was the unmistakable trace of a drowned world, a civilization erased not by war or decay, but by water. The story of Doggerland is the story of a world undone. As the last ice age came to a close, glaciers melted and sea levels began to rise. Slowly, the North Sea crept inward, swallowing meadows, forests, and settlements. The people who lived there must have watched the horizon shrink day by day, their world dissolving into the sea. Eventually, around 6000 BCE, a catastrophic event may have sealed their fate. The Storegga Slide, a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway, sent towering tsunamis crashing over the land. In a single day, an entire civilization could have vanished beneath the waves. But Doggerland was more than just a place lost to nature. The deeper mystery lies in how advanced its people might have been. The scale of their settlements, the sophistication of their tools, and the strategic placement of their dwellings suggest a society far more organized than typical Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. Some researchers propose that Doggerland may have been a center of early innovation, a cradle of culture that later gave rise to the mythic tales of floods and vanished lands. Could it have been the original inspiration for stories like Atlantis or Noah's Deluge? In recent years, scientists using advanced mapping and sediment analysis have reconstructed what Doggerland once looked like. Rivers flowed northward into a great estuary, feeding wetlands and inland lakes. Herds of red deer and aurochs roamed through birch forests, while early humans gathered shellfish along the shores. Yet, even with modern data, one question lingers: how much of that world was truly natural, and how much might have been shaped by human hands? Some evidence hints at deliberate landscape management. Pollen samples show controlled burning patterns, signs that the inhabitants may have cleared land for agriculture long before farming was thought to exist in northern Europe. If true, this would mean that Doggerland's people were among the first to transition from foraging to cultivation, making it one of humanity's earliest experiments in settled life. The North Sea, then, does not just conceal a forgotten land, but perhaps the roots of civilization itself. The sea's silence hides more than geography. Recent discoveries of human DNA in sediment cores suggest that the people of Doggerland were not isolated tribes, but part of a larger cultural network spanning Ice Age Europe. They may have traded goods, tools, and ideas with distant groups, connecting the edges of the prehistoric world. Some even speculate that Doggerland could have served as a hub, a meeting ground between early European and Atlantic cultures that exchanged more than survival skills, perhaps myths, rituals, and the first sense of shared identity. And yet, for all the data and technology, Doggerland remains elusive. Each sonar scan reveals more questions than answers. Were its people aware of the rising waters? Did they attempt to build barriers, or did they follow the retreating shoreline in search of higher ground? And when the final wave came, did anyone survive to tell their story? If traces of Doggerland's people endured, they may have carried their memories to the highlands of Britain, to the forests of Scandinavia, or to the river valleys of continental Europe. Perhaps those memories became the foundation of flood legends, echoes of a world where the sea itself was the destroyer. Across cultures, stories of a great deluge persist, of gods punishing mankind, of chosen survivors, of lands that sank beneath the waves. Could all these tales be the fragmented recollections of one catastrophic event, the drowning of Doggerland? There is a haunting beauty in imagining that somewhere, beneath layers of sand and salt water, entire villages still rest in silence. Hearths turned to stone, tools lying untouched, paths that once led to rivers now leading only to darkness. The North Sea, cold and indifferent, keeps its secrets well. Occasionally storms churn the waters just enough to lift a bone, a shard, or a forgotten artifact to the surface, as if the past itself is trying to breathe. For the people who study Doggerland, every discovery feels like a glimpse through time, a whisper from a civilization erased yet not gone. What was lost to the sea may still live in memory, not of people, but of the land itself. Doggerland's true legacy may not lie in what it built, but in what it became, a reminder that the sea has always been both cradle and grave, creation and undoing, giver and taker of worlds. Nan Madol, the Pacific city on the sea. Shrouded in mist and dense tropical foliage, the ruins of Nan Madol rise unexpectedly from the heart of Pohnpei. The jungle presses close on every side, but within its tangled quiet stands a city of stone, orderly, geometric, and impossibly old. To walk among its basalt walls is to feel the pulse of something ancient, as though these black pillars once belonged to an age the world has chosen to forget. Off the island's eastern coast, the site sprawls across hundreds of acres, its canals glinting faintly in the humid air. No one truly knows who built it, or why. Locals call it the Venice of the Pacific. But the name hardly captures its strangeness. Nan Madol is not simply a city on water, it is a city born of it. The ruins rest on nearly 100 artificial islets, each constructed from massive hexagonal stones stacked with impossible precision. Some weigh as much as 50 tons, yet there is no trace of how they were moved. Archaeologists puzzle over the logistics. Without metal tools, wheels, or draft animals, how could islanders have built a city that rivals the architecture of ancient empires? According to Pohnpeian legend, Nan Madol was founded by twin sorcerers, Olosopa and Olosipa, who arrived from the stars or perhaps from a vanished homeland beyond the horizon. They are said to have commanded the stones to float through the air, assembling themselves at their command. The story has endured for generations, not merely as myth, but as memory. Even today, locals speak of the place with reverence, claiming that disturbing the ruins invites illness or misfortune. The structures themselves tell their own story, one carved in volcanic glass. Pillared walls rise straight from the sea, forming courtyards, burial vaults, and temples aligned with the stars. At its core stands Nandawas, the largest enclosure, said to house the tombs of the Sodalur dynasty, rulers who, according to tradition, once governed with divine authority. But beneath that legend lies another, darker one, that the Sodalur were not the original builders at all, but inheritors of a kingdom that predated the Great Flood. Each tide that rolls through Nan Madol's canals seems to whisper that older truth. Long before the recorded rise of Mesopotamia or Egypt, before pyramids or ziggurats, there may have been a seafaring civilization that mapped the world's islands and left behind markers of their presence. Across the Pacific, megalithic structures from Tonga to Easter Island share uncanny similarities in design and purpose. The same basalt columns, the same alignments to celestial points, the same reverence for the ocean as both giver and taker of life. In the 20th century, explorers marvelled at how advanced the site appeared for such a remote culture. Some compared its precision to Machu Picchu, others suggested links to lost continents like Mu or Lemuria. When divers explored the surrounding waters, they discovered submerged stone platforms extending far beyond the visible city, as if Nan Madol were only the crown of something much larger, perhaps a drowned metropolis. Engineering secrets have endured hidden from the surface for centuries. The interlocking basalt columns show not just precision, but an understanding of weight distribution and structural stability that modern engineers marvel at. Channels and foundations suggest careful planning to manage tides, storms, and erosion, implying knowledge of hydraulics long before formal study. Some stones bear markings hinting at symbolic or functional inscriptions perhaps, instructions or warnings for future generations. Such sophistication raises the possibility that Nan Madol preserves techniques passed down from an earlier civilization, one whose mastery of stone and water predates recorded history. Modern studies attempt to date the ruins to around 1200 CE, but such certainty falters under scrutiny. Beneath the visible layers, sonar mapping has revealed older foundations buried under coral growth, implying repeated phases of construction, each older than the last. If the earliest stages truly predate the rise of Polynesian migration, then Nan Madol may represent a forgotten chapter of human civilization, one washed away by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. Patterns in the Pacific hint at a forgotten network. Similar megalithic sites in Tonga, Fiji and Easter Island suggest that Nan Madol was not an isolated marvel, but part of a broader maritime culture. Alignments to stars, coordinated construction techniques, and shared ceremonial motifs hint at communication and exchange across vast distances. Trade, ritual or knowledge may have flowed along these routes, leaving traces of a sophisticated pre-flood civilization whose influence once spanned thousands of miles of ocean, now submerged and nearly erased by time and tide. Some researchers note that during that period, sea levels were more than 100 meters lower, meaning vast tracts of land across the Pacific now lie beneath the waves. Could Nan Madol have once been part of a much larger complex, a trade hub for a civilization that spanned ocean routes now lost to time? If so, the Pacific city on the sea might once have stood at the heart of a thriving empire, its canals not a symbol of isolation but of connection. When night falls on Pohnpei, the ruins transform. The basalt glistens under moonlight, and the water turns black as ink. Crabs scuttle over the walls where kings once walked, and the jungle hums with unseen life. In the silence, the city feels awake, as if the stones themselves remember. Locals say that lights can sometimes be seen flickering beneath the waves, deep within the sunken sections of the ruins, ghostly reminders of something that refuses to stay buried. Scientists may attribute such tales to natural phenomena or imagination, but the feeling of the place defies explanation. There is an awareness that lingers in the air, a quiet intelligence that outlasts its makers. Whether the stones were floated by ancient technology, raised by human will, or shaped by some power long forgotten, their existence challenges the notion that civilization began only once, in one corner of the world. Nan Madol may never have been claimed by the sea at all, but merely guarded until we were ready to remember. The Olmec enigma, heirs of an unknown past. Shadows cling to the dense jungles of southern Mexico, where towering stone heads emerge from tangled vegetation as if guarding secrets long forgotten. The Olmecs, often called the mother civilization of Mesoamerica, appeared suddenly around 1500 BCE, leaving behind colossal sculptures and ceremonial centers that defy conventional explanation. These enigmatic creations, some weighing over 20 tons, suggest a mastery of engineering and artistry far beyond what one might expect from a people with no known predecessors in the region. Scholars have long debated how such achievements were possible, but the evidence hints at something older, a wisdom inherited from a time lost to memory. The heads themselves are unsettling. Each bears a distinct face, some bearing expressions of calm authority, others stern and inscrutable. Their sheer scale demands the labour of hundreds, perhaps thousands, yet the methods of transport and carving remain speculative. Lush rivers and marshlands surround these sites, raising questions about how stones were quarried and moved without advanced machinery. Some researchers propose the Olmecs may have drawn on knowledge passed down from an earlier civilization, one predating the written record and perhaps even a global cataclysm that reshaped human history. Ceremonial centres like La Venta and San Lorenzo offer glimpses into a culture that valued symbolism as much as stone. Platforms, mounds, and intricate drainage systems suggest a society with a sophisticated understanding of both urban planning and spiritual expression. Masks, figurines, and jade carvings reveal a fascination with the divine, often blending human and animal features in ways that hint at mythologies lost to time. Archaeologists note recurring motifs that appear centuries later in Mayan and Aztec art, suggesting the Olmecs' influence persisted long after their cities fell silent. It is as if a spark from a vanished world had been handed forward, flickering in the civilizations that followed. Mystery deepens when considering the Olmec calendar and astronomical observations. Alignments within their ceremonial centres indicate precise knowledge of celestial cycles, eclipses, and solstices. How such information was acquired in a pre-literate society is unclear. Some theorists speculate that the Olmecs were not inventors of this knowledge, but custodians of a tradition stretching back to a pre-flood civilization. This would explain the abrupt emergence of their cities and the sophistication encoded in their art and architecture. Artifacts add to the sense of enigma. Colossal stone masks, intricately carved jade figures, and polished greenstone axes appear almost impossibly refined. Techniques for shaping these materials remain debated, and some researchers argue that conventional tools of the era cannot account for the precision observed. A few objects even suggest trade or influence from distant regions, raising questions about whether the Olmecs were part of a broader network of cultures that existed before the known historical timeline. Each discovery nudges the story of the Olmecs away from the comfortable explanations of gradual cultural evolution and into the territory of the extraordinary. The human form in Olmec art is another riddle. Many sculptures depict infants or children with unusual cranial shapes, hinting at ritualistic practices or symbolic representation that has been lost. Some elongated skulls found in the region fuel speculation about hybridization myths or deliberate preservation of knowledge from an older race. Folklore and myth intertwined with these physical remnants, pointing toward a worldview steeped in mystery and reverence for forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Every artifact, every mound, seems to whisper of a past that predates memory itself. Waterways surrounding the Olmec heartland appear to have shaped their cities intentionally. Rivers were more than transport routes. They formed part of a symbolic and practical landscape that controlled flooding, facilitated agriculture, and possibly mirrored celestial patterns. The integration of nature into urban planning suggests an advanced environmental awareness, something often underestimated in early civilizations. Could this understanding have been taught by a vanished predecessor, one whose knowledge survived only in fragments encoded in stone and soil? Even the sudden disappearance of the Olmec civilization adds to the puzzle. By 400 BCE, many of their major centers were abandoned, leaving no written account to explain why. Some argue environmental changes, social upheaval, or conquest led to their decline. Yet the precision and care evident in their constructions imply a continuity of purpose that seems at odds with abrupt disappearance. It is tempting to wonder if the Olmecs in their time were guardians of something far older, an inheritance from an antediluvian past that vanished with the rising tides or shifting landscapes. Modern researchers continue to debate the origins and achievements of the Olmecs, but some lines of inquiry venture into extraordinary possibilities. Could they have been the heirs of a civilization destroyed in a pre-flood event, tasked with preserving knowledge through myth, art, and monument? The thought lingers because the Olmec legacy is more than artistic. It is a puzzle of identity, memory, and lost wisdom, a civilization that appeared fully formed, carrying the imprint of an earlier epoch in its hands, its temples, and its colossal faces. Echoes of Olmec knowledge ripple outward. Artistic motifs, architectural principles, and ceremonial practices appear centuries later in the Maya, Zapotec, and other Mesoamerican cultures. Some tools, figurines, and symbolic patterns suggest that the Olmecs served as a conduit, preserving and transmitting insights from a far older civilization. Their influence may have reached beyond their immediate region, leaving subtle traces of engineering, astronomy, and ritual that guided subsequent societies long after the Olmecs themselves vanished. The Olmecs' colossal heads remain silent witnesses to a wisdom older than memory itself. Lake Titicaca, the drowned temples of the Andes. The high Andes cradle a lake so vast it seems to swallow the horizon. Lake Titicaca shimmers in the sunlight, its waters stretching between Peru and Bolivia, hiding secrets beneath its placid surface. For centuries, local legend spoke of submerged temples, stairways and plazas now claimed by the depths. Modern divers have confirmed that something extraordinary lies beneath the waves, stone structures that appear too precise, too deliberate, to be mere natural formations. These ruins suggest a civilization older than the Incas, possibly predating the known history of the Andes by millennia. The first glimpses of these underwater monuments came in the 1960s, when fishermen reported strange rectangular stones rising just below the lake's surface. Later explorations revealed terraced platforms, walls and steps, all aligned with the cardinal points. Some stones show intricate carvings, eroded yet unmistakable in their craftsmanship. The layout evokes a ceremonial centre rather than a mere settlement, hinting at social complexity and spiritual practice. How a people built such structures at an altitude of over 3,800 metres, and why they now lie submerged, remains an enigma. Local legends speak of a great flood, a deluge that claimed cities and temples. Elders tell stories of Tiwanaku ancestors retreating to higher lands, while sacred spaces sank beneath the lake. Some archaeologists suggest rising water levels caused by glacial melting may explain the inundation, but the precision and scale of the stonework suggest a civilization both advanced and purposeful. The structures are too well formed, the carvings too deliberate, to dismiss as coincidental. Perhaps these temples were built by people who thrived in an age before the floodwaters reshaped the highlands. Diving into the cold, dark waters, explorers describe a sense of unease, as if the lake itself guards its secrets. Visibility is limited, and the temperature bites at the skin, yet the divers press on, revealing plazas arranged around central courtyards, stone channels that could have served for ritual or irrigation, and colossal blocks that weigh tens of tons. Some formations suggest astronomical alignment, echoing patterns seen in other pre-Columbian sites. The question persists: who built these monuments, and why were they abandoned beneath the lake? Their sudden disappearance raises the possibility of a cataclysm or an abrupt societal collapse. Artifacts recovered from the surrounding lakebed add to the mystery. Pottery shards, ceremonial tools, and carved figures bear stylistic features not seen in later Andean cultures. Some pieces resemble motifs from distant regions, suggesting either trade or a shared cultural memory stretching across continents. Carbon dating of organic remnants indicates dates that precede the rise of the Tiwanaku and even the Olmecs. It is tempting to speculate that the drowned temples are remnants of a pre-flood society, a civilization whose knowledge and artistry were swept into obscurity by rising waters. The surrounding islands offer further clues. On the Isla del Sol and Isla de la Luna, stone stairways and platforms echo the submerged ruins, as if the temples once formed part of a larger sacred network now fractured by water. Oral traditions speak of pilgrimages across the lake, with ceremonies performed at points that now lie beneath the surface. The alignment of the temples and islands hints at cosmological significance, suggesting that their builders understood celestial cycles and the movement of the sun and stars. Such sophistication challenges conventional narratives of cultural development in the high Andes. Mystery deepens when considering the scale of construction. Many blocks would require coordinated labour, advanced knowledge of leverage, and careful planning. There are no written records to explain the engineering techniques used, and no clear lineage connecting these builders to later civilizations. Some researchers propose that the knowledge may have been inherited from a civilization lost to time, a culture that predates even the oldest Andean societies and may have survived a great flood or climate shift. Their precision and vision speak of a people who understood both stone and spirit. The submersion of these temples also raises questions about memory and myth. Stories of sunken cities, lost kings, and hidden knowledge abound in local folklore. They speak of a time when the land was different, when water levels were lower and civilizations flourished across the high plains. These tales, often dismissed as legend, gain weight in the face of submerged stonework that defies natural explanation. Perhaps the myths preserved fragments of a forgotten history, encoded in narrative rather than in stone. As the sun sets over the lake, its reflection fractured by waves, one can imagine the vanished temples beneath the dark water, silent witnesses to an age no longer recorded in history books. The stones endure, their alignment, artistry and scale whispering of rituals, governance and an understanding of the natural world lost to time. Lake Titicaca holds more than water. It cradles memory, mystery and evidence that civilizations far older than we imagine once thrived, only to be claimed by the depths. Explorations continue, yet the lake offers no final answers. Each dive uncovers fragments of a civilization that challenges everything we think we know about pre-Columbian history. Whether the temples were deliberately submerged or lost to natural causes, they remain a testament to human ingenuity and a reminder that history may stretch farther back than our records admit. Every submerged terrace and carved block hints at knowledge passed down from a civilization before our time, a society whose legacy endures beneath the calm waters. The drowned temples of Lake Titicaca continue to captivate, for they are more than ruins. They're a silent testament to a forgotten era, a civilization swallowed by water, yet preserved in stone, waiting for the day when their story can be fully understood. Secrets older than memory itself are held by the temples, lying in quiet vigil beneath the lake. The Senegambian Stone Builders. The flat plains of West Africa stretch endlessly, punctuated by hundreds of stone circles that rise from the red earth like echoes of a forgotten civilization. These formations, spread across Senegal and the Gambia, defy the expectations of early historians. Thousands of megaliths, arranged in precise circles and lines, suggest a people with an understanding of geometry, astronomy, and ritual that remains unexplained. They appeared without written records and vanished almost as mysteriously, leaving behind only stone markers to hint at a culture that once thrived. Some circles are massive, with stones towering over human height. Others are small, forming intricate patterns that align with the movements of the sun and stars. The distribution of these circles across vast distances indicates coordinated planning, a knowledge of surveying, and possibly a shared belief system. Archaeologists remain puzzled by the scale and consistency of these sites. How could a society seemingly isolated from other contemporary cultures achieve such architectural sophistication without leaving a clear trace in history? Excavations have revealed that some stones were deliberately shaped and positioned, suggesting ceremonial purposes rather than simple boundary markers. Burials, pottery and tools found within certain circles hint at complex social structures and spiritual practices. Yet much of the material culture remains undeciphered. Unlike other ancient civilizations, the Senegambian builders left no written record. Their legacy is silent, encoded in stone, waiting for the careful observer to piece together its meaning. The alignment of the stones raises further intrigue. Many circles correspond with solstices or equinoxes, implying astronomical observation and ritual significance. Such precision suggests an advanced understanding of the cosmos, possibly passed down through generations. Some researchers argue that this knowledge could trace back to a pre-flood era, preserved through oral tradition and embodied in the construction of enduring monuments. The idea that these megaliths encode ancient wisdom challenges the assumption that complex knowledge emerges only with written records. Legends from the region speak of ancient kings, divine visitors, and the power of the stones themselves. Oral histories describe the circles as living entities, imbued with protective and spiritual energy. Elders recount tales of a time when the land was ruled by a civilization of remarkable skill, whose people disappeared beneath rising waters or shifting sands. Such stories, often dismissed as folklore, gain significance when set against the backdrop of perfectly aligned stones and the sheer scale of construction. Perhaps myth and history intersect here, preserving fragments of a world lost to time. The distribution of the stone circles also hints at social and political organization. Patterns suggest central hubs surrounded by smaller circles, possibly denoting settlements or sacred spaces. The labor required to transport and erect stones across hundreds of kilometers implies coordinated effort and specialized knowledge. The more one studies these formations, the more it becomes clear that the Senegambian builders were not simple tribes, but a structured society capable of monumental projects, sophisticated planning, and spiritual expression on a grand scale. Archaeologists have found similarities between the Senegambian circles and other megalithic sites around the world. Some parallels suggest either contact with distant cultures or the persistence of universal architectural principles preserved from a much older civilization. These connections remain speculative, but they invite the possibility that the builders were part of a broader network of knowledge, one that existed before recorded history and possibly survived the cataclysms described in flood myths across the globe. Mystery deepens when considering the disappearance of this culture. By the time Europeans arrived in West Africa, the stone circles were largely abandoned. Reasons for their decline are unknown. Environmental changes, migrations, or societal collapse may have played a role, but the meticulous construction suggests the loss was sudden or forced. Unlike other civilizations that left behind chronicles or artifacts, the Senegambian builders vanished almost entirely, leaving only silent stones to testify to their existence. The stones themselves evoke wonder. Some are decorated with symbols, others plain, yet their arrangement conveys a deliberate, almost ritualistic order. Standing among the circles, one feels a connection to a people whose presence is invisible but undeniable. Each stone seems placed with purpose, a marker of memory, ceremony, or cosmic understanding. The experience is both humbling and unsettling, as if touching a fragment of a civilization that predates modern memory. Modern research continues to uncover layers of complexity. Recent surveys using satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar have revealed previously hidden alignments and buried structures. These findings hint at a vast cultural landscape, far larger and more intricate than previously imagined. Every new discovery reinforces the idea that the Senegambian stone builders were custodians of knowledge, architects of ritual, and witnesses to a history largely erased from human memory. The plains remain quiet, the stones enduring through centuries of wind, rain, and human activity. They guard their secrets with an almost tangible presence, reminding visitors that history is not always written in books. Some knowledge is encoded in the earth itself, in stones carefully placed to survive time and oblivion. The legacy of the Senegambian builders endures not in written record, but in alignment, proportion, and enduring mystery. The stone circles challenge conventional timelines, hinting at a sophisticated civilization that could have existed long before what is officially recorded. Each circle, each massive monolith, whispers of rituals, astronomy, and social order lost to history. Observing them, it is difficult not to imagine a society that thrived in ways we can scarcely comprehend, leaving behind a puzzle that continues to defy explanation. Standing in silent testimony, the stones recall a civilization swallowed by time and memory. The Hyperborea of Malta underground legacy of a lost race. For countless ages, secrets older than memory have lingered beneath carved stone and shadowed chambers. Walls smooth and precise, adorned with niches and undeciphered motifs, speak of knowledge lost to time. Ritual and resonance intertwine, shaping spaces where sound becomes almost alive. Skeletal remains with unusual forms, artifacts of polished stone and delicate beads, and corridors leading deeper into darkness hint at a civilization whose wisdom may predate the world above. The Hyperborea holds its mysteries tightly, a puzzle of engineering, ceremony, and human intent that refuses to be fully understood. The architecture of the Hyperborea is extraordinary. Its chambers are not merely functional, they're deliberately shaped to create acoustic resonance, amplifying even the faintest sound into vibrations that echo through the rock. Some researchers call this the oracle effect, suggesting ceremonies may have involved ritualized chanting or music that interacted with the space itself. The precision required to carve such resonance into solid limestone without modern tools implies knowledge that seems almost lost to the ages, a legacy handed down or inherited from a civilization older than the builders themselves. Burials within the Hyperborea reveal even greater mysteries. Skeletal remains, many of which exhibit elongated skulls, indicate ritualistic practices or perhaps a distinct lineage of people whose origins remain unknown. These elongated skulls have fueled speculation about the Hyperborea's inhabitants and whether they carried knowledge from a pre-flood culture. Artifacts found alongside the remains, ornate beads, polished stone implements, and miniature figurines suggest a society that valued both the spiritual and material, blending art with ceremony in ways that modern archaeology struggles to interpret. Carvings and inscriptions within the Hyperborea offer tantalizing glimpses into a symbolic world. Abstract motifs repeat across chambers, some resembling spirals, others geometric patterns that evoke celestial alignment. There are no decipherable scripts, yet the consistency of design implies a shared understanding or codified knowledge. Perhaps these symbols were intended to preserve concepts too profound to convey in words, lessons about life, death, and the cosmos passed through generations in the language of stone. The construction of the Hypogeum itself presents logistical puzzles. Large limestone blocks were carefully excavated and removed, chambers hollowed with meticulous planning, yet there are no signs of conventional scaffolding or mechanical aid. Some archaeologists suggest water, levers, and simple tools could account for the labour, but the level of precision achieved raises questions about techniques and knowledge that predate recorded history. It is as if the Hypogeum's creators inherited a blueprint from an earlier civilization, one whose understanding of space, sound, and ritual far surpassed what we usually attribute to Neolithic societies. The underground environment amplifies the sense of otherworldliness. Descending into the Hypogeum, visitors report a profound quiet and a palpable weight in the air, a sensation as though the rock itself remembers the footsteps of those who came before. Light fades quickly, and the chambers seem to absorb sound and time alike. This effect may have contributed to ritual practice, allowing initiates or priests to enter altered states of consciousness, guided by the resonance and the oppressive stillness of the subterranean halls. The space feels alive, a vessel for memory, ceremony, and knowledge older than history. Local Maltese lore adds layers of intrigue. Legends speak of a people who knew the Earth's secrets, builders of temples and guardians of wisdom lost when seas rose and lands changed. These tales, preserved through oral tradition, echo the archaeological evidence, a society capable of monumental and precise construction, whose members may have been custodians of knowledge predating recorded history. The Hypogeum stands as a testament to this possibility, a stone record of practices and insights that vanish into silence once the corridors are left behind. The Hypogeum's uniqueness also lies in its verticality. 3 subterranean levels descend like a journey into memory itself, each smaller and more intimate than the one above. The progression may have held symbolic meaning, a physical metaphor for life, death, or spiritual initiation. Some chambers appear purposefully sealed, perhaps to protect sacred spaces or conceal rituals from the uninitiated. Every stone carved, every niche formed, speaks of intention, as though the builders were preserving knowledge for those who could comprehend it, for a future that would only rediscover the past. Even the placement of the Hypogeum within Malta suggests deliberate cosmological or geographical significance. Above ground, temples and monuments hint at a culture attuned to the land and the heavens. Below, the Hypogeum extends that awareness underground, merging natural geology with human ingenuity. The alignment of chambers and acoustic effects suggests that the ancients saw no division between spiritual, architectural, and astronomical practice. Everything is integrated, a holistic design that may have been inherited from an earlier, more advanced civilization, now lost beneath the sands of time. No final answers does the Hypogeum offer, even as excavations continue. Each discovery seems to multiply questions. Who were the builders, and from whom did they inherit their knowledge? Were they the first humans in this region, or successors of a civilization older than history acknowledges? Every artifact, every carved spiral, every resonant chamber invites speculation but resists conclusion. It is a place where mystery is preserved in stone, where the weight of the past is tangible, and where silence itself speaks. Descending from the Hypogeum, one is left with a lingering impression. This is not merely an archaeological site, but a portal into the forgotten. Its chambers hold echoes of a civilization whose mastery of space, ritual and sound has vanished from memory, leaving only stone to testify to its existence. The Hypogeum whispers of a people who carved memory itself into the living rock. The giants of the ancient world. Legends speak of beings taller than the tallest man, creatures whose footprints left impressions in stone and whose bones defy the proportions of ordinary humanity. Across continents and millennia, myths tell of giants walking the earth before great floods reshaped the world. Skeletal discoveries, fragmentary and often contested, hint at individuals whose size surpasses modern norms, while countless cultures have preserved tales of towering ancestors. These stories are more than fanciful folklore. They may be echoes of a reality long forgotten, a hidden chapter of human history obscured by time and water. Reports of colossal skeletons emerge from diverse regions. In the Middle East, mound burials reveal bones far larger than any ordinary human, In Europe and the Americas, scattered fragments appear in caves and riverbeds, sometimes buried under layers of sediment. Many finds are disputed, destroyed, or removed without proper documentation, yet patterns persist. Unusually large limbs, oversized skulls, and teeth of disproportionate size. The recurrence of such evidence across the globe invites speculation that a race of giants may have once existed, remembered only through myth and fragmentary remains. Ancient texts amplify the mystery. Sumerian epics describe beings called the Anunnaki, said to tower above humans, rulers and teachers of early civilizations. Biblical accounts speak of the Nephilim, offspring of divine visitors and mortals, whose presence prompted fear and cataclysm. Greek myths tell of the Titans, mighty figures whose struggles shaped the world. These narratives, separated by culture and geography, share astonishingly consistent motifs: enormous stature, unusual strength, and a connection to cataclysmic events. Could these legends be distant memories of actual beings, now mythologized over millennia? Archaeological anomalies deepen the intrigue. Some megalithic structures, such as massive stone walls and tombs, could scarcely have been built by ordinary humans. Their scale and precision suggest extraordinary physical capability or knowledge of leverage and engineering beyond what is commonly assumed. Stories of giants often accompany these sites in oral traditions, hinting that early societies recognized and preserved memory of beings who are larger, stronger, and perhaps wiser than themselves. The interplay between myth and monumental construction implies a link between memory, reverence, and tangible history. Bones attributed to giants often display unusual characteristics. Some skulls are elongated or unusually thick, suggesting not only great size but also structural differences. Limbs appear far longer than normal human proportions, and some rib cages indicate immense lung capacity. Modern analysis is limited, yet even fragmentary evidence challenges conventional anthropology. If giants truly existed, what became of them? Flood legends provide one possible answer: a cataclysm erasing their presence from the earth while preserving their memory in myth, much like footprints washed away by the tide. Hinting at organized lives are the traces of habitation uncovered by archaeologists. Excavations near purported giant sites reveal unusually large hearths, communal platforms, and remnants of structures that could have accommodated beings of extraordinary size. Tools and implements suggest practical knowledge of construction, food preparation, and resource management. These findings imply that giants may not have been solitary wanderers, but members of communities with social structures, capable of teaching and sustaining themselves while leaving subtle guidance for humans who followed. The consistency of giant myths across cultures is striking. From Native American tales of stone-throwing giants to Scandinavian legends of frostborn Jotun, the theme persists. Beings of extraordinary stature whose influence shaped the land and the people. Anthropologists suggest these stories may serve symbolic purposes, yet the physical evidence, however scant, hints at something more tangible. Perhaps giants were a pre-flood race, guardians or teachers whose memory survived in oral tradition, while the traces of their existence were swept away by catastrophe. Giants often appear associated with sacred or monumental locations. Many ancient structures, from high-altitude stone fortresses to subterranean tombs, are linked in legend to these beings. Their size is sometimes invoked to explain how immense stones were moved or why certain constructions seem impossible. Oral histories frequently describe interactions with humans, giants who guided, punished, or nurtured early communities. The repetition of these narratives across disparate civilizations suggests a shared memory, a puzzle whose pieces span continents and epochs. Although merely legends, some giants' stories imply advanced knowledge or mystical power. Tales describe their ability to manipulate natural forces, to see far distances, and to teach early humans agriculture, astronomy, and construction. These accounts, though mythic in tone, may encode the remnants of real knowledge, preserved in stories when the physical traces of giants were lost. The convergence of myth, skeletal anomalies, and monumental architecture creates a tantalizing possibility: a civilization or lineage of extraordinary beings who shaped human history before it was recorded. Skepticism remains, as with all mysteries of pre-flood antiquity. Many skeletal reports are unverifiable, and myths can distort memory over time. Yet the recurrence of motifs, the consistency of skeletal anomalies, and the association of giants with cataclysmic events make outright dismissal difficult. Across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas, the footprints of these beings, whether literal or symbolic, mark a world that once existed before modern memory began. Because they bridge the gap between myth and possible history, the giants of the ancient world continue to capture the imagination. They're both monstrous and familiar, terrifying yet awe-inspiring. Their story, obscured by floodwaters and lost civilizations, persists in stone, in oral tradition, and in the occasional bone fragment that surfaces to challenge the narrative of human origins. Scholars debate, explorers search, and storytellers recount, yet the truth remains tantalizingly out of reach, hidden beneath layers of time and legend. Among us once walked giants, leaving behind only whispers of their power and presence. Caral, the forgotten city before the Inca. Silent mounds rise from the arid plains of Peru, their contours blending into the earth as if hiding from the sun. Caral, the oldest known city in the Americas, emerged nearly 5,000 years ago, yet its existence was forgotten for millennia. Terraces, pyramids, and circular plazas reveal a society capable of urban planning, engineering, and ritual that predates the Incas by thousands of years. Its discovery challenges conventional timelines, hinting at a civilization whose sophistication might echo knowledge from a far older era, possibly even a pre-flood world whose memory survived in stone and soil. The city's layout is striking in its precision. Residential areas sit alongside ceremonial centres, connected by carefully aligned pathways. Platforms rise above the plain, their steps carved with mathematical accuracy. Circular plazas suggest gatherings for ritual or governance, yet no written language survives to explain their purpose. Archaeologists puzzle over the absence of defensive walls, implying that Caral may have flourished during a time of peace or under protection of distant powers. The harmony of its design suggests deliberate planning, a knowledge of space and proportion that seems almost inherited from a civilization older than memory. Musical instruments add another layer to Caral's enigma. Flutes made from bird bones and large spondylus shells were discovered in ceremonial centres, indicating that music played a central role in ritual life. The flute's design produces harmonics and tones that suggest an understanding of sound and resonance, an art that appears far ahead of its time. These musical practices may have served ceremonial, social, or even astronomical purposes, echoing techniques preserved from an older culture that valued knowledge in forms beyond writing. Agricultural innovation was central to Caral's survival. Canals, terraces, and irrigation systems reveal expertise in water management, a skill crucial in the arid coastal region. Crops like cotton, beans, and squash sustain the city, while cotton itself may have been cultivated for ritual or textile production rather than mere sustenance. The integration of agriculture with urban design reflects a civilization attuned to its environment, one capable of long-term planning and resource management. Such mastery raises questions about whether these skills were developed independently or inherited from a forgotten, pre-existing knowledge base. The pyramids of Caral are modest in height compared to later Mesoamerican monuments, yet they are monumental in concept. Built from stone and adobe, they served as platforms for ritual activity, offering points of alignment with the sun and stars. The precision of their construction, despite the absence of metal tools, underscores a level of sophistication that challenges conventional historical narratives. Caral's architecture seems to encode knowledge about cosmology, mathematics, and ceremonial hierarchy, suggesting that its builders were part of a lineage aware of principles that predate the city itself. Patterns in stone hint at unseen cycles. Certain alignments of plazas, pyramids, and ceremonial platforms correspond to solstices, equinoxes, and stellar risings, suggesting that Caral's builders were keen observers of the heavens. These arrangements imply not only ritual significance, but also an early understanding of timekeeping and celestial movement. The city itself may have functioned as a living calendar, encoding astronomical knowledge into its very layout. Such sophistication raises the possibility that Caral preserved techniques inherited from a civilization long forgotten, one attuned to both earth and sky. Uncovered at the site, the artifacts deepen the surrounding mystery. Stone sculptures, intricately carved figurines, and shell ornaments hint at social and spiritual complexity. Some designs appear to replicate motifs found in distant regions, implying possible connections or shared symbolic language with other early civilizations. The absence of warfare-related artifacts suggests a society focused on knowledge, ritual, and civic cohesion rather than conquest. Every object and construction at Caral raises the question, could this city represent a continuation of wisdom from a civilization erased by flood or time? The sudden disappearance of Caral further complicates the story. By around 1800 BCE, its urban centres were largely abandoned. No signs indicate invasion or violent collapse, implying that environmental shifts, social change, or rising waters may have led to gradual decline. Yet the meticulous construction and planning evident throughout the city suggest a civilization of considerable longevity and stability. Perhaps Caral, like other pre-flood societies, succumbed to forces beyond its control, while leaving behind the enduring imprint of its knowledge. Local myths and later Andean traditions may preserve fragments of Caral's story. Legends of golden cities, divine rulers, and sacred knowledge resonate with the archaeological evidence of urban sophistication and ritual practice. Oral histories, though often dismissed, offer clues about a worldview that regarded celestial cycles, agricultural mastery, and civic design as intertwined. In Caral, these threads are tangible, preserved in stone terraces, pyramids, and plazas that continue to whisper secrets from the distant past. The city's influence extends beyond its physical remains. Scholars note parallels between Caral's urban and ceremonial organization and later Andean centers, including the Incas. These connections suggest that knowledge survived, transmitted over generations, perhaps adapted but never entirely lost. Caral stands not merely as an archaeological site, but as a testament to the continuity of human innovation and memory, a civilization whose accomplishments hint at sources older than the city itself. Visiting Caral, one feels the weight of time and the deliberate care of its builders. The terraces and pyramids are silent but eloquent, speaking of a society that valued knowledge, ritual, and harmony with its environment. Each stone, each artifact, and each alignment embodies a civilization aware of both the natural and cosmic order. In this forgotten city, modern observers glimpse the shadow of a civilization that may have inherited wisdom from a world long submerged and nearly erased. Caral rises quietly from the past, a city whose memory predates the floodwaters of history. Hyperborea, the Northern Realm. Beyond the ice. Stories of a luminous land far to the north have circulated for millennia, whispered in Greek epics and Siberian legends alike. Hyperborea, a place of eternal sunlight and abundance, was said to exist beyond icy barriers where mortals rarely travelled. Accounts describe radiant cities, advanced knowledge, and people who lived in harmony with forces unseen. No archaeological site has been definitively linked to Hyperborea, yet the consistency of these tales across distant cultures suggests they may be echoes of a real civilization lost to time and climate. Greek authors spoke of Hyperboreans as the blessed ones, untouched by disease and aging, their lives long and serene. Offerings were sent to their temples from afar, implying a network of contact and respect. In Siberian oral histories, elders describe lands once fertile, now frozen, where ancestral peoples possessed extraordinary skills in construction, metallurgy, and astronomy. These narratives converge on the notion of a northern civilization that predates recorded history, a society whose knowledge vanished beneath ice and snow, but lingered in memory and myth. The climate of the far north, though harsh today, was not always so extreme. Geological evidence indicates periods of milder temperatures, allowing human habitation and possibly the development of sophisticated societies. In such a landscape, knowledge of agriculture, architecture, and celestial observation would have been vital. Hyperborea is described not as a struggle against nature, but as a civilization flourishing in harmony with it, hinting at technological and spiritual sophistication that may have surpassed contemporary cultures in temperate regions. Artifacts and traces scattered across northern Eurasia tantalize researchers with the possibility of Hyperborea's reality. Megalithic structures, subterranean complexes, and unusual carvings suggest human activity at high latitudes long before classical history. Some items hint at trade or influence spanning continents, indicating that northern societies may have participated in a broader exchange of ideas. While no definitive evidence ties these findings to Hyperborea, the alignment of myths and material remains raises the question of what knowledge survived beneath the ice. Since ancient times, legends have attributed extraordinary abilities to Hyperboreans. They were said to read the stars, harness energy from natural forces, and live in peace for generations. Some myths describe towering halls of stone and metal, crafted with precision unmatched elsewhere. Such descriptions echo archaeological anomalies found in far northern regions. Massive stone blocks, intricate underground chambers, and megalithic alignments that defy easy explanation. Whether these represent memory, exaggeration, or fragments of real structures, they invite speculation about a civilization that may have existed before recorded history recognizes its existence. Vanishing from history, Hyperborea's disappearance is as enigmatic as its existence. Rising ice, shifting climates, and cataclysmic events may have obliterated its cities, erasing tangible evidence while leaving only stories. Oral tradition preserves fragments of culture, ritual, and cosmology, encoded in tales of gods, radiant lands, and extraordinary peoples. These narratives suggest that Hyperborea was not merely a mythic paradise, but a real society whose members sought to understand the world and transmit knowledge across generations. Maps and ancient writings further complicate the mystery. Classical texts hint at northern lands rich in resources and wisdom, sometimes connected symbolically to the origins of humanity. Later explorers searching Arctic and Siberian regions occasionally reported structures or anomalies that seem out of place with known history. While these findings are often contested, they reinforce the notion that Hyperborea may have left faint, scattered traces preserved in memory, legend, and the occasional surviving artifact. Hyperborea's influence may extend beyond its physical boundaries. Some scholars propose that northern myths informed southern civilizations, embedding knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and spiritual practice into distant cultures. The migration of peoples, combined with oral tradition, could have transmitted fragments of Hyperborean wisdom into the wider ancient world. The idea of a northern cradle of civilization challenges assumptions about the origins of advanced knowledge and the timelines of human cultural development. Emphasizing longevity, wisdom, and harmony, stories of Hyperboreans continue to captivate. They are depicted as teachers, healers, and custodians of knowledge. Myths recount journeys to their cities, quests for wisdom, and encounters with beings of exceptional understanding. These tales, repeated across Greek, Siberian, and even Celtic sources, suggest a memory of a civilization that inspired awe and respect. The alignment of myth with anomalies in northern archaeology hints at the persistence of knowledge even after the physical culture vanished. The northern realm, lost to ice and time, remains a compelling enigma. Its people, its cities, and its wisdom survive primarily in stories, yet these stories exhibit remarkable consistency. From radiant temples to advanced astronomical observation, Hyperborea embodies the idea of a pre-flood civilization whose knowledge may have informed generations across continents. Each account, each legend, is a thread connecting us to a vanished world, challenging the notion that history begins with the civilizations of the temperate world. Explorers, historians, and mythologists continue to search for Hyperborea's traces. Some follow maps and ancient texts, others investigate megalithic alignments or underground structures, yet all acknowledge the same truth. If Hyperborea existed, its secrets lie beneath layers of ice and memory, waiting for those willing to read both legend and stone. The civilization remains both impossible and plausible, a shadow at the edge of history, remembered through fragments that refuse full explanation. Hyperborea lies beyond the ice, a radiant realm whose wisdom outlasted time itself. Bimini and the Caribbean ruins, echoes of Atlantis. No map marks the place where the stones lie, yet they emerge from the shallows with a presence that cannot be ignored. Near Bimini, limestone blocks form terraces, straight lines, and what appear to be streets. Divers who stumble upon them report a sense of design so deliberate that it seems impossible to be natural. Each block rests like a fragment of a message, a puzzle left behind by hands whose knowledge has been erased by time and tide. The blocks stretch for miles across the seabed, forming platforms and causeways that defy expectations of ancient Caribbean cultures. Their alignment suggests planning, perhaps even ritual. Some formations correspond to celestial points, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of the sun, tides, and stars. Whoever built them left a record in stone, one that challenges the assumption that complex construction arose only in distant continents. As local legends recount, whole cities have been claimed by the sea. Fishermen tell of glimpsing terraces at low tide, faint outlines that vanish as the waves rise. Stories speak of vanished wealth, knowledge and culture, preserved only in memory and tale. Bimini's underwater ruins seem to bridge myth and reality, a tangible echo of civilizations that vanished long before recorded history. Scientific exploration reveals more than De Vere's first imagined. Sonar scans uncover rectilinear patterns and terraces that hint at streets, ceremonial platforms, or perhaps docks. Some stones bear grooves and chisel marks, evidence of deliberate shaping. Other blocks appear to have been placed to channel currents or interact with tides. The sophistication of design suggests an understanding of geometry and engineering far beyond the expectation for the region's known ancient inhabitants. Artifacts discovered near the formations reinforce the mystery. Pottery shards, carved stones, and ceremonial implements suggest human activity, ritual, and perhaps even trade. Radiocarbon dating indicates that some materials could predate known civilizations in the Americas, hinting at a society that flourished before global flood events reshaped coastlines. The ruins of Bimini may represent a surviving fragment of a pre-flood civilization whose achievements have been mostly forgotten. The stone's orientation raises further questions. Certain terraces align with solstices or equinoxes, suggesting ritual significance. Others seem to form geometric patterns that are only fully visible from above. These arrangements hint that the builders encoded knowledge in both placement and proportion, preserving understanding of astronomy, cosmology, and civic order in stone. Each terrace and causeway becomes a fragment of a larger code, a message across millennia. Some stones tell stories in silence. Marine fossils embedded in the limestone, coral growth along edges, and mineral deposits hint at centuries of submersion and exposure, marking the passage of time with a slow, deliberate hand. These layers suggest that the terraces and causeways were once above water, sculpted and walked upon by people whose memory now survives only in fragments of stone and legend. The evidence aligns with theories of rising seas and flood events, offering a subtle geological confirmation that Bimini was once part of a thriving coastal world. Atlantis naturally comes to mind. Plato described a civilization of extraordinary wealth and technology, destroyed in a single day and night. Bimini, with its sunken terraces and stone streets, evokes the imagery of such a city. Whether or not it is Atlantis, the site provides a glimpse into a society capable of monumental construction, advanced planning, and ritual practice far earlier than previously assumed in the region. The Caribbean itself acts as both protector and obscurer. Shifting sands conceal and reveal terraces unpredictably, hurricanes move stones, and tides obscure causeways at different hours. The ephemeral visibility of the ruins creates a sense that the site is deliberately withholding its secrets. The ocean transforms the formations into a puzzle, one that demands patience, attention, and imagination. Divers report unusual phenomena around the ruins, currents moving oddly near certain blocks, acoustic anomalies, and fleeting reflections that seem to shimmer along submerged walls. While skeptics argue these are natural effects, the consistency of reports suggests the formations interact with their environment in subtle ways. It is as if the stones were designed not only to endure, but to communicate something about the world above the water. Similar submerged structures appear elsewhere in the Caribbean, implying an interconnected network of settlements or ceremonial sites. Patterns repeat across islands, hinting at a maritime civilization capable of planning, organization, and cultural cohesion over vast distances. Together, these remnants suggest a civilization that thrived before rising waters claimed its cities, leaving only faint traces of its presence. Voices of the past seem to echo in fragments of tools and ceremonial artifacts discovered near the terraces. Chipped stone implements, carved shell ornaments, and pottery shards indicate human presence and ritual activity, hinting that these structures were more than functional, they were sacred spaces. The precision and care evident in these items suggest a culture that combined practical skill with spiritual understanding, preserving knowledge in objects and monuments that the sea has only partially reclaimed. Bimini stands as a reminder that history may be far deeper than textbooks suggest. Each stone, each terrace, and each causeway challenges assumptions about the origins of civilization, revealing the possibility of pre-flood societies whose knowledge and skill have been partially lost to the ocean. The site invites speculation, wonder, and a reconsideration of what human beings were capable of before recorded history began. Encased in the Caribbean's depths, the terraces of Bimini whisper the story of a civilization claimed by time and tide. Aratta, the lost kingdom of the gods. They spoke of a city that shimmered with gold and wisdom, a place beyond the mountains and rivers where gods walked among men. Aratta, the fabled kingdom of Sumerian epics, is described in fragments of clay tablets and chants that survived the centuries. Its location is lost to memory, its streets vanished beneath the soil of time, yet the texts hint at a civilization radiant with knowledge, craft, and power. To read of Aratta is to glimpse a world where humans and the divine intertwined, a society that may have predated known history and preserved truths now forgotten. Sumerian scribes wrote of rulers who commanded the land from distant palaces, envoys who travelled treacherous paths to deliver tributes of precious stones and metals. Aratta is depicted as a hub of art and culture, a centre of innovation whose artisans worked in gold, silver and lapis lazuli. The meticulous accounts of craftsmen and their tools suggest advanced techniques and a mastery of resources that surpass what is expected of the era. These fragments evoke a society sophisticated beyond imagination, hinting at knowledge inherited from an older, possibly pre-flood civilization. Every description of Aratta intertwines wealth and ritual. Temples are portrayed as luminous spaces, where priests conducted ceremonies under the guidance of celestial patterns. Mathematics, astronomy and ritual appear inseparable, encoded in measurements of walls, the orientation of sacred halls, and the materials chosen for construction. Even the smallest artifact described in the epics, a finely carved vessel, a tool of bronze or stone, carries the implication of deliberate intention and high craftsmanship. Such precision suggests that Aratta's citizens were not only builders but scholars, preserving knowledge that may have been lost elsewhere in the ancient world. Trade and diplomacy seem to have defined Aratta's place in the world. Sumerian texts recount the transportation of lapis, timber, and precious metals across great distances, suggesting the kingdom's influence stretched far and wide. Envoys risked deserts, mountains, and rivers to reach its gates, carrying messages, gifts, and demands. The sheer scale of these journeys implies not only geographical knowledge, but also logistical organization, social cohesion, and technological sophistication. Aratta appears in the records not as a myth, but as a real entity, one whose power and wisdom were acknowledged by neighbours who had the means to write their own histories. Weaving through history, legends add new layers to the city's enduring mystery. Some describe Aratta as a repository of secrets, a place where knowledge of the heavens, the earth, and the human mind was preserved. Priests and scholars maintained teachings in hidden libraries or through oral tradition, safeguarding them from the inevitable chaos that follows human hubris. Flood myths across Mesopotamia and surrounding regions hint that these treasures may have been submerged or buried, erased from the surface yet lingering in stories that blend history with memory. Equally mysterious as its achievements is Aratta's disappearance. Its riches and wisdom vanish abruptly from the written record, leaving only references in Sumerian epics. Some scholars speculate environmental disaster, invasion, or political collapse. Others suggest the kingdom was intentionally concealed, its treasures and knowledge safeguarded underground or in remote locations until humans were ready to rediscover them. Whatever the reason, the abrupt absence of Aratta amplifies its mystique, transforming it from a historical site into a symbol of lost human potential. Artifacts and evidence of trade hint at Aratta's reach. Lapis from distant mountains, gold and silver crafted into ritual objects, and finely worked clay all point to a civilization with both resources and expertise. These items, if ever found outside textual records, would confirm what scribes described: a kingdom that thrived not merely through conquest, but through innovation, artistry, and mastery of natural and cosmic law. Each reference in the epics is a breadcrumb, guiding modern researchers through a labyrinth of myth, memory, and lost knowledge. Aratta's story is preserved in contrasts. It is at once radiant and hidden, wealthy yet vanished, real and dreamlike. The city represents the possibility of a civilization that transcended ordinary human limits, a society whose legacy might survive only in fragmentary texts, ritual descriptions, and whispered tales. The careful recording of its rulers, its envoys, and its artisans suggests deliberate preservation of memory, as if the scribes knew that the world to come might forget the brilliance of Aratta. To study Aratta is to navigate between fact and myth. Every account in Sumerian tablets is a puzzle piece, yet the full picture remains elusive. Scholars debate locations, artifacts, and trade routes. Every new discovery in Mesopotamia offers tantalizing hints, inscriptions, traces of trade, and cultural parallels that may connect Aratta to other ancient centers. Yet certainty remains impossible. Aratta endures as a symbol, a kingdom whose memory survives through the act of remembering itself, encoded in story rather than stone. Even now, Aratta exerts a quiet pull on imagination. Its story is a reminder that history is incomplete, that human ingenuity may have reached heights now forgotten. It challenges the assumption that knowledge arises linearly and that civilizations appear only where recorded history begins. Aratta, lost yet remembered, offers a glimpse of a world where wisdom, craftsmanship, and divine inspiration converged, a pre-flood civilization whose echoes still resonate. Connections ripple outward through time. Certain motifs, mathematical concepts, and artistic techniques described in the Sumerian texts suggest that Aratta's knowledge may have seeded neighboring civilizations. From metallurgy to architectural principles, elements of Aratta's sophistication appear echoed in distant lands, hinting at a network of early intellectual exchange. These traces imply that even as the city itself disappeared, its ideas travelled, shaping human development in ways that survive only in fragments, symbols, and subtle patterns woven into the fabric of later societies. Aratta exists in memory and myth, a kingdom of gods whose knowledge outlived the ages. Shambhala, the hidden realm beneath the mountains. The civilization of Shambhala thrived in ways that defy ordinary understanding. Every artifact, every symbol, and every tablet hints at knowledge meticulously preserved across centuries. Their culture was organized not merely around survival, but around the deliberate transmission of wisdom, as if they foresaw that their world might one day vanish. Scholars examining fragments speak of mathematics and astronomy encoded in patterns that appear both functional and ritualistic, a dual language meant for those who could read it. Fragments of tablets recovered from hidden chambers show sequences and symbols unfamiliar to any known system. Some depict complex celestial cycles, others outline processes that suggest early engineering principles lost to time. These inscriptions do not resemble ordinary writing. They are a civilization's deliberate effort to immortalize understanding, a message left in stone and clay for an era that might finally be able to interpret it. Polished ceremonial tools, carved stones, and mysterious objects accompany the inscriptions. They appear designed with precision and purpose, combining artistry with function. Each item feels like a component of a larger system of knowledge, part of a repository created by the people of Shambhala to outlast upheaval, floods, and forgetfulness. Their civilization did not merely build, it encoded their understanding into objects that could endure long after human memory faded. Numerical sequences etched repeatedly into stone reveal a fascination with patterns and cycles. Some alignments hint at astronomical observations, suggesting that Shambhala's people were keenly aware of celestial events and their influence on the world. These discoveries imply that mathematics, observation, and ritual were inseparable in this society, reflecting a civilization that integrated knowledge into every aspect of life, from governance to spirituality. The hidden chambers of Shambhala yield evidence of deliberate secrecy. Passageways, compartments, and coded inscriptions suggest that knowledge was intended to be accessed selectively. Only those who understood the logic and purpose could navigate the civilization's legacy, a society safeguarding its wisdom from outsiders and catastrophe alike. The effort to protect understanding indicates an awareness of impending change, perhaps even awareness of a global cataclysm. Some symbols refuse to be fully understood. Certain engravings and mechanical remnants suggest that Shambhala's people may have experimented with energy, water, or simple machinery in ways that exceed contemporary assumptions. Carved channels in stone, levers integrated into ceremonial platforms, and structures oriented to capture natural forces hint at technology intertwined with ritual. These features imply that the civilization prioritized practical knowledge alongside spiritual understanding, blending engineering and wisdom into a seamless whole. Implying ritual practice aligned with the stars, some artifacts reveal ancient astronomical knowledge. Carved stones and engraved tablets appear to mark solstices or equinoxes, though their exact function remains unknown. The precision and repetition suggest that the people of Shambhala preserved knowledge through ceremonies, ensuring that the principles of their civilization were remembered, even if their physical structures were lost. Their focus was not fleeting power, but enduring comprehension. Trade, if it existed, remained speculative, yet fragments hint at connections beyond the immediate area. Polished metals, carved materials, and rare stones suggest that the civilization of Shambhala either acquired or valued resources that required complex organization. Even in isolation, their objects demonstrate a sophistication in production and conceptual understanding that surpasses neighboring contemporaneous cultures. Certain inscriptions hint at philosophical or metaphysical understanding. Symbols appear in sequences that suggest cause and effect, balance, and cycles beyond the material world. Scholars theorize that Shambhala's people may have developed a holistic system of knowledge, intertwining mathematics, astronomy, and ethics. Their civilization was not merely technological, it was intellectual, encoding an understanding of existence itself into stone, clay, and crafted objects. Legends speak of emissaries or guardians preserving Shambhala's wisdom for future generations. While myths often exaggerate, the artifacts themselves support the notion of intentional preservation. Objects placed in hidden compartments, inscriptions resistant to time, and coded sequences suggest a civilization aware that its survival might depend on secrecy. This deliberate concealment may explain why no city of Shambhala has ever been conclusively discovered, yet its influence persists in fragments. Voices of instruction echo silently in the patterns left behind. Evidence suggests that the civilization cultivated scholars, initiates, or guardians trained to decode inscriptions and operate the hidden mechanisms of Shambhala. Lessons were embedded in the artifacts themselves, in sequences of symbols and in ceremonial arrangements, ensuring that only those prepared could access the full breadth of knowledge. This careful selection and transmission hint at a society deeply aware of the fragility of wisdom, safeguarding its survival across generations and possible cataclysms. The civilization of Shambhala endured in memory and object alike, a testament to the human desire to preserve knowledge against the inevitability of loss. Their artifacts, inscriptions, and hidden repositories challenge modern understanding of what a pre-flood society could achieve. They hint at a civilization that integrated intellect, ritual, and craft into every creation, leaving traces of wisdom for those willing to search and interpret. Every discovery of Shambhala's objects or symbols is a reminder of how fragile history can be, and how much can survive when preserved with intention. They reveal a society capable of planning across centuries, encoding knowledge in ways designed to resist both nature and time. To study them is to confront the possibility that civilization's deepest secrets may not lie in ruins or landscapes, but in carefully preserved knowledge, patiently awaiting rediscovery. Shambhala endures in artifacts and inscriptions, a civilization whose wisdom outlasted the ages. The Caucasus Builders, Watchers of the First Age. Stone rises in silent testimony across the Caucasus, massive blocks aligned with precision that defies casual explanation. Scholars stumble at the scale and sophistication of these structures, their origins obscured by layers of time and legend. Some claim the ruins are temples, others suggest fortresses, yet every formation hints at knowledge far older than the civilizations traditionally credited with them. These were not ordinary builders, they were watchers, a people whose craft and understanding seem to belong to a vanished epoch. The enormity of some stones baffles imagination. Carved terraces, colossal walls, and platforms built with near-perfect alignment suggest techniques beyond known technology of the region's ancient inhabitants. The Watchers of the First Age understood leverage, weight, and geometry in ways that echo through the millennia. Their constructions were deliberate, imbued with purpose, and perhaps designed to last far beyond the lifespan of any human society that followed. Lying near the ruins, artifacts contribute to the growing sense of mystery. Bronze implements, carved figurines, and ceremonial objects indicate ritual activity, suggesting the Caucasus builders were not only engineers but also keepers of sacred practices. These artifacts reveal a civilization conscious of permanence, encoding meaning in both structure and symbol. They hint at a society where technology, spirituality, and observation of the cosmos intertwined seamlessly. Alignments within the ruins reveal astonishing sophistication. Some walls correspond to cardinal directions, while certain terraces and openings align with solar and lunar cycles. Scholars suggest these placements were intentional, encoding astronomical knowledge into stone. The Watchers may have observed the heavens with precision, mapping stars and cycles to guide both ritual and survival, embedding cosmic understanding into the very fabric of their constructions. Speaking of giants or beings of great stature, regional legends contrast with fragmentary skeletal evidence and remnants. Some researchers hypothesize that the builders were unusually tall or robust, their strength necessary to manipulate stones of massive proportion. Others suggest these stories symbolize the advanced skills and near-mythical knowledge of the Watchers, remembered through oral tradition as beings larger than life. Certain carvings hint at connections with distant civilizations. Similar motifs appear across Anatolia, the Middle East, and even parts of the Caucasus steppes, implying a network of cultural exchange or shared knowledge. The Watchers may have been part of a broader pre-flood society, exchanging techniques, beliefs, and architectural methods across vast distances. Their influence seems to transcend geography, hinting at an interconnected human experience now obscured by time and catastrophe. The ruins themselves display remarkable endurance. Centuries of earthquakes, erosion, and human activity have altered their appearance, yet the core constructions remain, defying both nature and expectation. This durability suggests intentional design for permanence, a hallmark of the Watchers' approach. Each terrace and wall was placed with foresight, their purpose and significance coded into every angle and alignment. Scholars examining these ruins have discovered anomalies that raise further questions. Subterranean chambers, hidden passages, and seemingly impossible stone joints suggest advanced engineering knowledge. Some blocks are interlocked in ways that modern technology struggles to replicate, hinting at techniques lost with the civilization itself. The complexity of construction implies intelligence that blends practical engineering with a symbolic or ritualistic understanding of space. Traces of movement hint at forgotten knowledge. Certain grooves and channels carved into the bedrock suggest that the Caucasus builders used ingenious systems of levers, rollers, and pulleys to position stones of immense weight with precision. Evidence of wear patterns on the stones indicates repeated manipulation, as if each block was tested, adjusted, and set with care over long periods. These remnants reveal a civilization not only of visionaries but of engineers who understood force, balance, and coordination in ways that modern science can barely reconstruct. The Watchers' understanding of time may also have been profound. Some terraces appear to track cycles longer than a single human lifetime, perhaps anticipating changes in climate or celestial patterns. These observations suggest a civilization thinking in centuries or millennia, leaving guidance for generations beyond their own. Their constructions were not merely functional, they were messages encoded in stone for anyone who could decipher them. Reflecting a concern for observation and documentation, the artifacts suggest the culture's priorities. Carved stones resemble calendars, while some figurines may represent celestial events or mythic stories. These elements indicate that the Caucasus builders were intentional about preserving knowledge, encoding it in ways that could survive catastrophes that might erase cities and populations. Their civilization seems defined by foresight, intellect, and reverence for what endured beyond fleeting human lifetimes. Evidence also suggests the Watchers may have had spiritual or philosophical systems guiding their work. Certain sites appear deliberately aligned to natural phenomena, hinting at ritualized observation of the cosmos. The combination of practical engineering, astronomical knowledge, and ritual suggests a society that understood both the material and immaterial worlds, bridging what we now separate as science and belief. Their disappearance remains a mystery. Whether lost to flood, invasion, climate change, or a combination of factors, the Caucasus builders left a record only in stone and fragmentary artifacts. Yet the power and precision of their construction speak louder than absence, inviting modern observers to wonder about knowledge lost and rediscovered, about civilizations that rose before history as we know it. Every wall, terrace, and artifact calls for attention. They are fragments of a civilization that existed at the edge of memory, whose achievements challenge the timeline of human history. The Caucasus builders remind us that what survives is not always the obvious or celebrated, but the durable, the encoded, and the enigmatic. In the shadows of the Caucasus, the Watcher's stones endure, guardians of a civilization erased by time. Antarctica, the frozen remnant of a lost civilization. Maps show only ice and desolation, yet beneath the white expanse lie hints of something far older. Satellite imagery and ice-penetrating surveys reveal geometric shapes and linear formations that refuse to be purely natural. Some appear to be streets, terraces, or foundations, hidden beneath layers of frost and snow. They speak of a civilization whose existence predates modern understanding, a culture swallowed by ice yet recorded in stone and shadow. Strange anomalies have captured the attention of geologists and explorers. Straight lines that stretch for miles, raised plateaus with regular edges, and unusual soil densities hint at construction. While conventional science attributes them to glacial movement or volcanic activity, the precision and repetition of these forms raise questions that science cannot fully answer. They suggest planning, design, and possibly a society capable of large-scale organization. Drawing from ancient maps and obscure texts, the mystery becomes ever more compelling. Cartographers from the 16th and 17th centuries sometimes depict continents in ways that contradict modern coastlines. Some researchers argue these charts reflect knowledge of lands free of ice, while others believe they preserve fragments of memory from travelers or civilizations lost in prehistory. Antarctica emerges not as a barren wasteland, but as a continent whose hidden history has been erased by climate and time. Metallic objects, carved stones, and fossilized remains occasionally surface through shifting ice or melting layers. Each discovery fuels speculation about a culture that thrived before the continent became uninhabitable. The artifacts are enigmatic, some appear functional, others ceremonial, and a few display craftsmanship beyond known prehistoric abilities. Together, they paint a picture of a civilization advanced enough to leave traces that challenge the assumptions of modern archaeology. Patterns discovered under the ice suggest roads, walls, and even city layouts. Rectangular foundations, evenly spaced mounds, and stone alignments hint at architecture. Some formations are repeated across distances too great for coincidence, suggesting urban planning or ritual significance. The consistency of these features implies a culture that could organize, design, and construct at a scale previously thought impossible for the era. Remote sensing techniques reveal more mysteries. Radar and magnetic surveys uncover anomalies inconsistent with natural formations. Some structures appear interlinked, forming networks across kilometers of ice. Scientists debate their origins, yet the patterns themselves demand attention. Whether remnants of habitation, ceremonial grounds, or infrastructure, they point to human, or at least intelligent, activity in a place assumed to be inhospitable for tens of thousands of years. Geological evidence hints at a time when Antarctica was temperate. Fossilized plants, ancient soil layers, and sedimentary records indicate that the continent once supported life far beyond the few species that now survive at its edges. If civilization existed during that era, the ice would have arrived later, preserving traces beneath miles of frost. In this view, the frozen continent becomes a tomb, safeguarding remnants of knowledge, architecture, and perhaps even memory from a civilization lost to global change. Some anomalies suggest energy or water systems. Carved channels, depressions, and level terraces hint at deliberate engineering. Whether designed for irrigation, drainage, or ritual, these features point to an understanding of environment and resources, a civilization adapting to shifting landscapes with foresight and skill. They suggest a society capable of both observation and manipulation, blending practicality with knowledge that has since disappeared. Surrounding sediment layers and nearby ice cores hint at trade or cultural exchange, with materials not native to Antarctica appearing in small quantities. Shells, fossilized plants, and mineral fragments suggest contact with distant lands, or perhaps knowledge transferred through travelers who moved across vast, now submerged continents. If true, these connections indicate a civilization not isolated but integrated into a broader network of early human or pre-flood societies, hinting at shared wisdom that spanned the globe long before written records began. It is through artifacts recovered from ice cores or eroded outcrops that remarkable craftsmanship becomes evident. Polished stones, incised carvings, and tool remnants hint at a people who valued both function and aesthetics. The attention to detail suggests a culture aware of permanence, encoding information and meaning into durable objects. These artifacts, sparse as they are, echo the sophistication of pre-flood civilizations known elsewhere, hinting at shared knowledge or parallel development. The continent's remoteness and ice cover have preserved these mysteries, yet they also conceal them. Each year, melting layers or exploratory missions reveal only fragments, keeping the full scope of the civilization beyond reach. Scholars debate whether Antarctica was home to a flourishing society or a few isolated enclaves, yet the consistency of structures, artifacts, and anomalies suggests planning, intention, and cultural cohesion. Some researchers point to alignment with celestial phenomena. Certain formations seem to correspond with solstices, star positions, or other astronomical markers. If true, the builders of Antarctica were not only skilled in construction, but also in observation of the heavens, integrating cosmic knowledge into their architecture. Their legacy may contain both practical and spiritual dimensions, encoded in ways still invisible beneath the ice. Survivors or emissaries of this civilization, if any existed, left no recorded accounts. Their voice is frozen, fragmented, and largely silent. All that remains are stone, soil, and occasional artifacts, teasing the imagination. These remnants challenge assumptions about human history, technology, and adaptation, hinting at a society capable of thriving in a time and place far beyond what textbooks acknowledge. Every discovery in Antarctica adds to the mystery of a pre-flood civilization, erased by ice yet encoded in structure and object. Each anomaly, artifact, and architectural trace suggests intelligence, foresight, and a culture that understood both its environment and the cosmos. The frozen continent becomes a silent archive, waiting for the thaw of knowledge as much as the thaw of ice. Although buried beneath Antarctic ice, the remnants of a lost civilization wait silently for time to reveal their secrets.